Chapter 21, Meeting Aizen. Author note. Sorry for the delay, had a busy week. End of author note. Several hours later, in a decently sized house, two naked women could be seen lying next to each other on a bed. While one of them was breathing a little haggard, the other one had a leisurely smile on her face as she was playing with the lock of the first woman's long blonde hair. Ha, what kind of freak stamina do you have, ha Yuna? Hearing the blonde woman's question, Yuna chuckled in amusement as she shrugged her shoulder. In regards to stamina, few are my match, and in regards to stamina on the bed, no one can compare to me, Matsumoto. After Yuna issued her claim, Matsumoto didn't comment any further. Considering how long they went at it and Yun seemingly being good to go a few more hours, she half believed Yuna's claim to be true. Seeing that Matsumoto didn't reply, Yuna chuckled in amusement and got off the bed. She grandly stretched her back, giving Matsumoto a good show. Naturally, Yuna noticed that Matsumoto was watching her, resulting in a grin. Like what you are seeing. Yup, good stuff. Unlike Hinata, who initially was rather shy, Matsumoto had no trouble being naked or seeing her partner naked, so Yuna could only shrug at the failed teasing attempt. Oh well, I guess you want to catch some sleep. Matsumoto simply nodded her head at Yuna's question. She was pretty exhausted and definitely needed some sleep. Yeah, I'm tired. What do you plan to do now, Yuna? Kira should have made his report by now, so people will know what you look like. No worries. I'm not that easy to catch. As for my plans, I'll either go and bully a few nobles or invade the 11th division. As soon as Yuna finished speaking, a heavy atmosphere covered the room as Matsumoto looked at Yuna in disbelief. Be bully nobles or go to the 11th division. What the hell are you thinking? Aren't you here to save Rukia? Hearing Matsumoto's words, Yuna paused for a minute before frantically nodding her head. Yes I'm definitely here to save Rukia, ha ha ha. I totally didn't forget about that, ha 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 cough. Matsumoto's face deadpanned when she saw Yuna's reaction. No matter how she looked at it, Yuna completely forgot about Rukia. Yuna saw how Matsumoto was staring at her and couldn't help but chuckle a little. No need to look at me like that. The rest of my group will arrive in about 6 days, so I might as well have some fun and enjoy myself a little before they are here. How in the world is bullying nobles and attacking Sirite's most combat-orientated division fun? Yuna tilted her head in confusion when she heard Matsumoto's answer, as if she couldn't even grasp what she was talking about. How is it not fun? I mean, bullying pompous nobles are obviously one of the best things one can do. As for the 11th division, I simply like fighting, so I think it's a good target. Seeing Yuna looking at her like she was the weirdo, Matsumoto could only roll her eyes at Yuna. You do realize that both of these things have a high chance of killing you, right? After hearing Matsumoto's question, Yuna couldn't help but start laughing as she walked back towards the bed and patted Matsumoto's head. Ha ha ha, you are pretty funny, Matsumoto. Me dying just from messing with some nobles and a powerful military division. Truly hilarious. Matsumoto's face deadpanned as she realized that trying to convince Yuna with reason and logical arguments seemed to be pretty much impossible. The only way for her to sway Yuna's plans would be to suggest something she found more interesting. Matsumoto was pretty sure that a few more rounds under the sheets would qualify, but she was too exhausted for that. Sorry about that, noble clans. I'm sure you will be fine, maybe, probably, oh well, good luck. A few minutes later, Yuna left Matsumoto's house, and as she was walking, she decided on what to do next. Yup, I'm gonna bully some nobles first. Sigh, I can't help but pity them a little. What is there to pity? They are nobles, Karema. They exploit those they consider to be born with inferior blood while being nothing special themselves. Even if you claim that you have no idea whether that is actually true or not. No matter what you say, you have only met a single person from a noble clan so far, and he could at least back up his attitude with his strength. Well, what can I say? There are nobles, after all. It's only natural for them to be trash. Just because I met one decent one doesn't change anything. In that case, what if the nobles of this city are actually decent people? Hearing Karema's question, Yuna couldn't help but chuckle in amusement. That's one funny joke, Karema. People with a lot of political sway are pretty much guaranteed to get corrupted by the power they hold, so I have not a mote of doubt in me that the nobles of this city will be trash as well. At least most of them will be. Very well, then. Let's take a look. Yup, and what better place to infiltrate than the gathering place of all the big shots? Central 46, here I come. Meanwhile, Aizen was yet again in a room filled with monitors as he was reading through the newest report regarding the person who invaded Sirite. Naturally, this report was provided by Kira. Fascinating. How did she manage to become a Soul Reaper? That should be impossible. No matter how he thought about it, a normal human becoming a Soul Reaper was impossible. In his opinion, the only reason why Ichigo could become one was that his father was one as well. The more information I collect about her, the more fascinating she becomes. Does she have a Shinigami down her family line, or is she simply a freak incident? What about her brother? Did he become a Shinigami as well? How is she strong enough to easily defeat 2 lieutenants simultaneously? The more he read about Yuna, the more curious he became about her. By now, he pretty much had decided to take her to Hueco Mundo as soon as he could no longer stay in Sirite. While Aizen was deep in thought about Yuna, another man entered the room and glanced at the pondering Aizen. Captain Aizen, I heard a lieutenant was kidnapped by the intruder. Should we do something about that? Hearing the man's question, Aizen simply shook his head with disinterest. No, I don't care about the kidnapped lieutenant. Just leave her be, Jin. Hearing Aizen's words, Jin almost lost control over himself before regaining his calm instantly. Unlike Aizen, he cared about Rangiku Matsumoto a lot and really would like to search and rescue her. However, he also knew that asking for that would have been a bad move, as that would reveal to Aizen that Jin actually cared about one of the Soul Reapers within Sirite. He couldn't allow that to happen. He had to keep his image as an uncaring monster until he finally got his chance to retaliate against Aizen for taking part of Rangiku's soul all these years ago. Unlike what Jin expected, Aizen saw the flash of emotions passing through Jin's face, causing him to smile inwardly. He always knew that Jin would one day betray him. Initially, he didn't know why Jin desired him to be dead, but now that he briefly saw Jin displaying some emotions for Matsumoto, he could at least form a guess. Simultaneously, Aizen came up with a few ways to possibly use Matsumoto's unknown relationship with Jin to his advantage. Man, what the hell is this? I came all the way here to bully some nobles, and when I arrived here, all of them were dead. That's kinda annoying. Now I have to seek out the noble clans individually. Seriously, how rude can they be? Aizen was about to continue talking with Jin, but before he could do so, an unknown voice echoed out of one of the screens monitoring all of Sirite. Aizen and Jin's heads immediately snapped towards the relevant screen, and on it, they saw a young woman with red and blue hair leisurely walking into a courtroom filled with 46 dead bodies while a pout was on her face. She actually went towards the central 46? Why? Hearing Aizen being flustered for once, Jin couldn't help but chuckle in amusement while pointing at the monitor. She already said her reason, Captain. She wants to bully nobles. Aizen's head snapped towards Jin, and he looked at him in disbelief. Although Yuna did indeed say that, he didn't believe for even a second that someone would break into one of Sirite's best-guarded buildings for such a childish reason. Moments later, Aizen got out of his daze and stood up with a serious expression on his face. He immediately walked towards the door while leaving a few words behind. Your favorite ovals at n/vl/bin.com. Let's hurry. We need to capture her before she can mess anything up. I don't want the deaths of the Central 46 to be known yet. Meanwhile, Yuna was leisurely riffling through a bunch of closets and drawers while inspecting their contents. Oh, this letter has confidential written on it. Let's take a look. After swiftly ripping open the envelope, she started reading its content and could only frown due to what she had read. Apparently, Shinigami, who were considered to be future threats, tended to be looked away before they could even do anything forbidden. Nasty busness imprisoning people for things they haven't even done yet is not very nice. However, as she continued reading, her frown grew more and more stern, and as soon as she finished reading, she balled up the letter and tossed it away. Preemptively imprisoning people is one thing, but a few of these so-called nobles actually pulled some strings to get a few people shipped to the research department to test all kinds of things on them. Moyuri Kurotsuke, huh? I might have to grant his division a little visit as well. I really should have a nice and kind conversation with him. Oh, what do we have here? To think the intruder would go so far as to slaughter our government body. Suddenly hearing a voice, Yuna gave the duo who had just arrived a small glance before putting her focus back on searing through a different cupboard. Aizen and Jin, huh? Nice to meet you, I guess. Aizen briefly paused his steps when Yuna casually identified him, but in the end, it didn't really matter. You know us? I'm impressed. Yuna hummed an acknowledgement as she opened another envelope that had confidential written on it, causing Aizen's eyebrows to twitch in irritation. If I plan to invade a place, I'll obviously gather information about its big shots first. Seems like what I heard about you is true, Aizen. Oh? And what have you heard about me? Well, I heard you are a kind man that is always ready to help others. Overall, a good person. Aizen nodded his head at Yuna's explanation. That was exactly the image he wanted to portray while still living in Sirite. He really wondered why Yuna even brought that up, but before he could do anything else, Yuna's next words caused him a massive shock. As the person who killed all these nobles, you are obviously a good person. Naturally, Aizen was surprised at how Yuna confidently stated that he was the culprit. Despite there being no evidence, she somehow seems to be absolutely certain that her words were correct. Aizen could feel no doubts in her words. However, Aizen was a master at tricking people, so he was not someone who would lose their composure from simple guesses. That's quite the accusation from the one being alone in this bloody place while reading documents she shouldn't read. Yuna simply shrugged her shoulders as she tossed another letter aside while searching for more interesting things to read. It couldn't have been me who killed these people, as all of them had been dead before I even got into Soul Society. Every half-decent medic could tell as such. Additionally, I noticed someone monitoring this place, and as soon as I entered, you two arrived here. Rather suspicious, no? Although Aizen still had a calm expression on his face, he couldn't help but feel slightly helpless with the current situation. It's not like he could just not come here after Yuna invaded this place. He had to act, otherwise, things would have spiraled out of control. Honestly, I don't even know why I am holding this conversation. I should have just knocked her out the moment I entered this room. However, before Aizen could make his words come true, Yuna dropped another bomb. Geez, I wonder why someone would spy on this place. Well, obtaining information about the actions of the political leaders is always a good thing, but I feel this whole setup is a little too dangerous. Almost like the person who secretly installed those spying methods didn't plan to stay here much longer. For example, someone who plans to betray Siridi anyway. Yuna's words caused Aizen to freeze up. Despite Yuna's words being well-structured and logical, Aizen couldn't believe how she managed to see through his intentions with such ease. Well, just the act of killing the Central 46 was already a massive act of betrayal, but even finding out that he was the one responsible due to him coming here was pretty insane. Obviously, Aizen was not someone who faltered easily, so he quickly continued speaking with an indifferent smile on his face. Impressive fantasies you are having there, but I'll still have to capture you. Even if you weren't the one who killed these people, you still broke in here and read important documents. You need to be captured. Yuna couldn't help but chuckle in amusement when Aizen easily dismissed her theory as her having a vivid fantasy before she shrugged her shoulders in indifference. Well, I would rather not get captured, so how about I offer you an alternative solution? Aizen frowned a little when he heard Yuna's words, but after thinking about them for a while, he motioned Yuna to continue speaking. Frankly, over the course of occasionally monitoring her together with Ichigo, Aizen had become very curious about Yuna, a character that seems to defy all his expectations. Hehe, let me join your side. That should be fun. Aizen was taken aback by Yuna's offer, but after thinking about it for a short moment, he actually grew a little fond of that idea. He had planned to kidnap her at some point in time anyway, so, her coming with him by her own will was actually a good outcome. However, Aizen was not someone who would willy-nilly accept new people in his ranks. Why would you want to join me? Aren't you here to rescue Kukiki Rukia? I do want to rescue her, but considering the central governing body of this place had been dead for a while, you have been calling the shots in here, correct? Clearly, your plans involve Rukia in one way, so I was wondering whether a part of your plan involved Rukia's death, and if it doesn't, aren't things fine? As for why I would want to join you, this side seems to have a lot of dirty clothes inside their closets. As she said that, she dangled another confidential letter in front of her face. This one writes about sending a group of Shinigami to the rowdier part of Soul Society to get rid of the trash. Aizen's eyes widened as he realized what Yuna was talking about. He has been a captain for a while now, so he naturally was aware of the darker aspects of Soul Society. I see, she is still young, after all. After breaking in here and reading about a few dirty secrets, anger built up within her against Siridi. No matter how frightening her thought process is, she is still young and emotional. Since she concluded that Siridi were the bad guys, who plans to go against them, must be a good or at least better guy. So the only worry she still has is about her friend, who is supposedly going to get executed. In conclusion, as long as I don't cause Rukia's death, she will be on my side. How interesting. I guarantee you that my plans won't end with Rukia's death. In case everything I planned for succeeded, she will be, at worst, temporarily weakened. Hearing Aizen's guarantee, Yuna sighed in relief as a smile appeared on her face. That's good. In that case, let's work together from now on. Oh, but I won't be joining you just yet. I still have a few things to do within Siridi. Indeed, let's cooperate. However, there is still something else that needs to be done. Yuna watched Aizen with curiosity as he pulled out his blade. Shatter Kyoka Suijutsu. As Aizen said his Sanpakuto's name, the mist started filling the room, causing one's senses to be distorted. Well, what do you think about my Shikai? Yuna frowned when she heard Aizen's words before simply shrugging her shoulder. Water illusion type, huh? No offense, but I prefer more direct types. Hearing Yuna's answer, a small smile appeared on Aizen's face as he sheathed his Zanpakuto. Is that so? Too bad. I'm actually quite fond of it. As he finished speaking, he turned around and left, leaving Yuna behind. Complete hypnosis was a success. Although she has a compelling reason to go against Siridi, there is no way I'll trust her blindly, so this should serve as a good backup strategy. Meanwhile, Yuna looked at the back of the leaving Aizen and Jin and couldn't help but smirk. Interesting, he can at least control my sight and sense of touch. I wonder if he can affect the other three senses as well. He left a sliver of his spiritual power in my body, which I assume serves as the anchor for his ability. I'll leave it there for Nor so he won't be alarmed, but I think I can pull a lot of fun stuff with this, hehe. Chapter 22, Finding a Hideout. A few minutes later, Yuna was strolling through Siridi at a leisurely pace while happily humming to herself. The conversation with Aizen had given her a pretty good chunk of information, so she naturally was in a good mood even if there were no nobles to bully. As she was walking through the city, her sense picked up a rather familiar sensation, causing her to smile lightly. As expected, they have one inside the city as well. Very good. Following her senses, Yuna quickly arrived at an inconspicuous-looking wall, causing her grin to widen. Yup, I can feel it. As she said that, her hand lightly brushed along the wall while injecting spiritual power into it with a certain pattern. Moments later, the wall moved, revealing a set of stairs that went underground. Found it good think I memorize how Kisuk unlocks his underground training area. She swiftly stepped on the first step and went underground while the door behind her was hidden away automatically. After walking down for about a minute, she found what she was looking for, a colossal underground space that doubled down as a training area and a place to live. There even was a hot spring area? Meanwhile, at Rangiko Matsumoto's residence, Rangiko wore a somewhat conflicted expression. She actually slept with an intruder. She didn't know what kind of punishment something like that would warrant, but it couldn't be anything good. Shit, if someone asks, I'll just claim Yuna forced herself on me. Sure, I don't mind. Hikya. Suddenly hearing someone talking behind her, Rainjiku yelled out in surprise, causing the owner of the other voice to chuckle in amusement. What the hell, Yuna? Why did you sneak up on me like this? Hearing her question, Yuna simply shrugged her shoulders with a grin still clearly displayed on her face. Because I wanted to see your reaction. I have to admit, it was pretty cute. Rainjiku's glare intensified, but moments later, her shoulders sagged as she sat down on a nearby chair. Why are you back already? Are you already done with your outrageous activities? Hearing her question, Yuna shook her head as she sat down opposite Rainjiku. Nah, I found something interesting and immediately thought of you. Currently, you can't exactly walk in the open, so I found a nice place for you to relax. Staying at your house is rather unsafe. Rainjiku smiled when she realized that Yuna had been worrying about her safety, but moments later, the smile vanished and was replaced with a frown. That's really nice of you, but how am I supposed to get there? As you said, I can't exactly walk around in the open. Yuna scoffed at Rainjiku's worries and wagged her finger at her. What are you talking about? Aren't I here? How could you possibly get detected when I'm the one leading you? Let's not forget that I managed to appear directly behind you without you noticing. Hearing Yuna's boisterous claim, Rainjiku's frown deepened, but after realizing just how easily Yuna had sneaked up on her, she could see where she was coming from with her claim. She pondered the situation a little longer, and after realizing that staying here at her house could truly be dangerous, she nodded her head at Yuna's offer. Fine, if you are that confident, then Ellie. What the hell? Before Rainjiku could fully agree, ropes shot out of Yuna's sleeves, binding Rainjiku in a tight turtle shell bondage. Well, if you tie you up, then even if we are discovered, there won't be any trouble for you. That's all very nice, but was it really necessary to tie me up with a bondage technique? That's ridiculous. How else am I supposed to tie you up? Oh, I get it. You prefer another rope technique. No worries, just make your request, and I'll adjust the ropes. Rainjiku's face deadpanned as she looked at Yuna in disbelief. However, she couldn't see a sliver of mischief nor a teasing smirk, meaning that she probably was serious. So, there was only one thing she could do. Please add a crotch rope. She might as well run with Yuna's antics. Yuna, on the other hand, nodded in approval when she heard Rainjiku's request as more ropes shot out of her sleeves, modifying how Rainjiku was tied up. Nice, kinky. I like it. So, a few minutes later, a tied-up woman carried by another woman could be seen running through Siriti, and just as Yuna had promised, they arrived at the secret hideout without anyone spotting them. Why is there such a massive hidden underground space underneath Siriti? Who built this? Urahara Kisuk did. Rainjiku's eyes widened when she heard that name. Although it had been a long time, she had read that Urahara Kisuk was initially one of Siriti's captains but was exiled for some unknown reason. Okay, and how in the world did you find it? Easy, I have seen the same hideout in the world of the living, so sniffing this one out wasn't too hard. Seriously? Is that really how it works? I have sharp senses, so everything is fine. Rainjiku could only shake her head due to Yuna yet again doing something outrageous. Seriously, how abnormal can someone be? Oh well, I at least can't feel any malice against Siriti in her, so things won't get too bad, right? So far, it seems that Yuna is more interested in pranking people than anything else, so I'm sure everything will be fine. Meanwhile, Yuna inspected Rainjiku's body with scrutiny. She had noticed it earlier during night activities, but Yuna noticed that something seemed to be wrong with her soul. Obviously, Rainjiku noticed Yuna looked at her from top to bottom and chuckled in amusement while lightly parting her clothes, revealing more of her cleavage. If you want another round, I don't mind. I have rested a little, but more than one is impossible. Yuna smirked a little as she shook her head in denial. Although I wouldn't mind going at it again, a single round couldn't even be considered a snack, so let's do something else. Earlier, I noticed that there seemed to be something wrong with your soul. It feels as if a part of it is missing. Rainjiku's eyes widened in shock after Yuna finished speaking, instinctively taking a step back while taking on a defensive stance. How do you know about that? Well, as I previously managed, I have sharp senses. So, would you like me to help you out with that? Fixing your soul should allow you to become more powerful, while there honestly is no drawback. Rainjiku's head snapped towards Yuna as her jaw hit the ground due to Yuna's seemingly impossible claim. You can fix it? I have never heard of anyone being able to fix a damaged soul. Even Retsuo Nohana, Siriti's greatest healer, wasn't able to do so. Obviously, Rainjiku would be skeptical of Yuna after she made such a wild claim. However, Yuna wasn't bothered by Rainjiku's doubts in the slightest and only shrugged her shoulders. Well, I'm not just anyone. Just because others can't do it, it has nothing to do with me. I'm that great. Besides, fixing your soul isn't really the correct term. It would be better to say that I have a method to regrow the missing part. Although Rainjiku couldn't really believe Yuna's words, in the end, she still agreed to Yuna helping her. Worst case, nothing changes. Best case, her soul is restored, which might even allow her to learn her Bankai at one point in time. Okay, I still have some doubts, but please help me out. It's not anything dangerous, right? No, as long as you aren't acting with reckless abandon, there is no risk involved. Rainjiku's face became serious as she eagerly nodded her head. As long as there was no risk, then why not try it? Okay, please sit on the ground and close your eyes, Rainjiku. Rainjiku simply nodded her head and sat down, quickly followed by Yuna, who did the same behind her while putting her hand on Rainjiku's back. I want you to concentrate on the spiritual power I'll be injecting into your body. Don't worry, although that would usually be a dangerous act, there are a few tricks to mitigate the danger. Rangiku simply nodded her head as she fully concentrated on the warm palm on her back, and a few seconds later, she could feel a minuscule mote of foreign spiritual power entering her body. Usually, something like that would be considered an attack, and hers and Yuna's spiritual power would clash, but surprisingly, none of that happened. Rangiku quickly realized that the reason that there was no clash was that Yuna had tuned her spiritual power to Rangiku's. How in the world does she do that? Just how much control does she have over her spiritual power? That's ridiculous. Focus. A jolt went through Rangiku's body when she heard Yuna scolding her and quickly put her attention back on the sliver of foreign spiritual power coursing through her body. New chapters will be fully updated at Novell/bin.com. Initially, she had no idea what was going on, but the more it moved around her body, the more relaxed she became while her senses grew sharper. Clearly, Yuna was doing something to improve her body, which was currently in soul state, effectively fixing her soul. It took Rangiku around an hour before she memorized the path the spiritual power was supposed to take, causing Yuna to remove her hand. See, isn't that easy? Hearing Yuna's casual question, Rangiku could only look at her in bewilderment while uttering a single word. How? Seeing the bewildered Rangiku, Yuna chuckled in amusement before leisurely letting her upper body rest on the ground. It's a method to circulate some spiritual power in your body to stimulate it, effectively making it grow stronger. It's called Cultiva, Supreme Cultivation Divine Art, plundering the heaven and earth's resources. You really changed it this time, huh? Obviously, I need to take this chance and correct the blunder of my previous life. Meanwhile, Rangiku's face deadpanned yet again as soon as Yuna named her technique. There is no way I'll say that out loud. Hihi, that's a really good name, but I think I will just shorten it to Cultiva. No, you won't. Before Rangiku could finish speaking, Yuna interrupted her, and just as Rangiku was about to start arguing with Yuna, a shiver went through her spine as her eyes met Yuna. Holy hell, that stare can probably kill a person. Oh well, I'll just comply. It's not like there will be many chances to actually utter the name. Ha ha ha, as I was saying, what a fascinating name. Supreme Cultivation Divine Art, plundering the heaven and earth's resources. How domineering. As soon as Rangiku changed her mind, a happy smile returned to Yuna's face as she nodded in approval. Haha, it's got that you understand, Rangiku. After all, it would be a great disservice to the technique's creator if its name was spoken incorrectly, don't you agree? Yes, I sighs, very disrespectful. I'll make sure always to use the full name in the future. Hearing those words, Yuna nodded in satisfaction as she got up from the ground while picking Rangiku up as well. This place has a hot spring. Interested. Rangiku's eyes widened in shock when she heard Yuna's words before they started shining in excitement. A hot spring? What are we waiting for? Let's go. Seeing the excitement in Rangiku's eyes, Yuna chuckled in amusement and carried her toward the hot spring for a relaxing bath. Another day passed, and Yuna was currently making her way to the 11th division with a wide smile on her face. She had decided that today she would fight the supposedly immortal Zaraki Kenpei, who had rumors surrounding him that he couldn't be cut. Cutting him up is going to be fun. I heard he's a battle junkie, so we should be able to have a lot of fun together. Who might you be? You look a lot like the reported intruder. Unfortunately, while drooling in anticipation of the soon-to-happen fight, Yuna let her focus slip a little. Frankly, it was rather surprising that someone found her despite that. So, Yuna turned around and looked at the person blocking her from having fun. It took her a while, but she realized the identity of the person rather quickly, as she was rather an important figure in Siritai. Retsu Anohina. Huh? No offense, but I'm not too interested in fighting a healer. Anohina was somewhat taken aback at how leisurely Yuna acted despite a captain-level fighter appearing in front of her. However, Anohina was rather happy about Yuna's stance in regard to fighting her, as she didn't like fighting and would rather have everything resolved peacefully. Well, frankly, she loved fighting, but what she didn't love was fighting those that were too weak to put up a fight. In her opinion, only two people were qualified to fight her: the head captain and the real Zaraki Kenpei. In conclusion, she had no interest in fighting some random intruder. However, just before they could walk away from each other, the two met eyes. Then, without any warning, the duo's eyes sharpened as incredibly dense spiritual pressure erupted out of the duo, suffocating every Shinigami nearby. Simultaneously, Anohina's hair was undone due to the powerful pressure, revealing a single deep scar in her chest area. The pressure kept going for a few seconds before Yuna was the first to speak with a face-splitting grin on her face. You are a healer? What a joke. Aren't you a killer? Unlike Yuna, there was no grin on Anohina's face. Instead of that, a creepy-looking smile had formed as her eyes turned lifeless with a hint of insanity. Indeed, I am a killer. However, what about you? Just how many have you killed yourself? When would you even have had time to do so? Aren't you supposed to be a human? Hihi, don't tell me, I don't care. If it's you, the feeling of joy might actually return to me. The joy of fighting and killing your opponent, I truly missed it. She was just about to attack Yuna when her movements halted. This is not good. This is the middle of Siritai. If she can actually make me go all out, nothing of Siritai will be left if we fight here. Maybe, we should do it anyway. Who cares about Siritai? Seeing Anohana's conflicted expression, Yuna chuckled in amusement as she knew exactly what the problem was. If you want to follow me, I have a nice place where we can fight to our heart's content. Anohana's head immediately snapped towards Yuna, doubt clearly visible on her face. In her opinion, there was no way an invader would have a location within Siraitai where she could unleash her Bankai. Everything would just melt away, no matter where she fought. However, her desire for a proper fight vastly overshadowed her sense of logic, so a few seconds later, Anohana decided to follow Yuna to whatever hideout she had. Maybe she will lure me into a trap? No, I highly doubt that. There is no way she would think that a simple trap could deal any significant damage to me. Maybe, she really has a safe location. As impossible as that seemed to be, Anohana truly wished for it to be true. The first time she fought an opponent worthy of her, she disappointed her enemy, unconsciously forcing him to hold back. She could only hope that she wouldn't make the same mistake again, ruining another incredibly powerful being. A few minutes later, the duo arrived at the previously mentioned wall, and while Anohana clearly still had some doubts about his whole situation, Yuna injected her spiritual pressure into the wall, causing it to open and Anohana's jaw to drop to the ground. To think there really was a secret location like this. Who in the world built this? Thinking about the owner, a man wearing a stripped head briefly flashed through her memory, causing her to shake her head. That damn Urahara Kisuk, just how many things has he hidden away? Despite all her doubts, Anohana didn't say a word and silently followed Yuna, who by now had a happy skip in her step. She seems to truly like fighting and still has fun while fighting. How enviable. A few moments later, the duo reached the bottom of the stairs, giving Anohana another surprise. Although she had expected this to be some kind of secret base, she was not expecting it to be this humongous. The size is adequate, but can this facility really endure our clashes? Hearing Anohana's question, Yuna shook her head in denial. I don't know about you, but I would tear this place into shreds, so a few additional modifications need to be made before we can start. Anohana nodded her head in understanding before she noticed a third person being in here. Her gaze wandered to the source of the spiritual power she felt, and to her surprise, she found the so-called missing Lieutenant Matsumoto, who was currently relaxing inside a hot spring drinking sake. Unfortunately, Ranjika was in her own world, so she didn't notice two people approaching until one of them spoke to her. You seem to enjoy your kidnapping, Lieutenant Matsumoto. Naturally, Matsumoto was startled due to someone suddenly talking to her, and as soon as she opened her eyes, her face paled. CC Captain Anohan, and nice meeting you here, hehe. Obviously, she was rather startled by a captain suddenly standing in front of her, so the only thing she could do was glare at Yuna in annoyance. What is the meaning of this? Do you want me to get punished, Yuna? Instead of answering, Yuna only chuckled in amusement as her gaze landed on Anohana. Since we are about to have a good fight, you won't care about Ranjikja being here, right? It didn't take Anohana long to think about Yuna's question before she answered. As long as I get a proper fight, I don't care about any of that. Ranjika's mouth opened as her eyes bulged out, and her chin hit the ground. Is that Captain Anohana letting a rule slip? I don't think that has ever happened in the history of Siraitai. What the hell is going on here? However, Anohana completely ignored Ranjika's shocked expression and turned her attention back to Yuna instead. Anyway, let us prepare for the fight. Show me if you are capable of awakening my desire for battle, because if you don't, you will die. Hearing Anohana's words, a grin split her face as she drew one of her swords. Yay, let's have a lot of fun. Chapter 23, vs Anohana. Yay, let's have some fun. As Yuna said that, she pulled out one of her swords and pointed it skyward. But first, let's prepare the location, freeze all of creation and consume it, Karema. Ugh, I really don't like everyone knowing my name. Want me to change it? It's not like I actually use your name. Tell me the alternative name first. Ten-tailed Divine Ice Kitsune. Yeah, let's stick with Karema. Got it. As Yuna and Karema were bantering, Yuna's Zanpakuto changed form, becoming much bigger, broader, and longer while turning ice-like and somewhat transparent. Simultaneously, the temperature in the room started dropping drastically, and moments later, Yuna stabbed her sword into the ground, causing it to freeze. Karema? Wasn't it chaos? And what's with the ice? Hearing Ranjika's outburst, Yuna simply chuckled in amusement and put her focus on the task at hand. Around a minute later, the whole underground cave was covered with a thin layer of ice that, surprisingly, no longer gave off a cold feeling. Well, let's seal this room up. As Yua said that, she twisted her Zanpakuto, resulting in quite a bit of spiritual power getting injected into the ice, resulting in a complex pattern of unknown symbols covering everything inside the cave. Meanwhile, Anohana inspected everything happening around her with clear fascination in her eyes, and as soon as Yuna was done, she started talking. Fascinating. I have never seen a barrier Kido getting deployed like this, nor have I ever seen the one you used. Hearing Anohana's words, Yuna shrugged her shoulders as if it was natural for Anohana to be surprised. That's only natural. After all, I'm the one who developed the Kido and the application technique. Anohana nodded her head, clearly impressed by Yuna's words, but moments later, her mood switched back, resulting in an eerie smile. GTL test on no/v/elvin.c/om. Anyway, I hope you are ready. As she said that, she slowly pulled out her Zanpakuto and pointed at Yuna. Because if you aren't, you will die. With these words spoken, Anohana vanished from her position and reappeared in front of Yuna with her sword already swinging downward. The sound of two swords colliding echoed through the room as two incredibly powerful spiritual pressures collided, causing space to tremble as a powerful shockwave obliterated the ground they stood on. However, the duo wasn't bothered by that in the slightest as they drew back their blades for another clash. Again and again, the duo's swords clashed until Yuna overreached in one of her swings, resulting in a small opening Anohana could utilize. A glint passed through her eyes as she stabbed toward the opening, but just before she could injure Yuna, her instincts flared, and she quickly put more spiritual power into her legs. This allowed her to vanish from her position just before multiple icicles stabbed into the space Anohana occupied not even a second ago. Are you sure you don't want to use your Shikai? Currently, I have a massive advantage due to my release. As Yuna said those words, the air above her rippled, resulting in dozens of icicles appearing above Yuna's head. Seeing this, Anohana could only shake her head. Unfortunately, my Shikai is not a combat type, so this will have to do. Anohana raised her sword and ran towards Yuna at high speed while Yuna's icicles started spinning and shot toward her. She easily dodged the first one by slightly shifting her body to the side and redirected the next one with a precise palm strike to the side while destroying the next one by cutting it in half. Ha ha ha, nice. What great combat skills. Yuna couldn't help but get excited when she saw how Anohana skillfully weaved through the rain of icicles while slowly approaching Yuna's position. Yuna truly wasn't expecting that she would find such a skilled sword master, seemingly by accident. How truly lucky. I am pretty sure she is more skilled than anyone I have met in my second life if. Of course, that is if we are looking at skill alone and don't consider actually combat power. What about Hinata? Meh, I don't really consider her a swordsman, and I don't consider her assassin techniques to be swords techniques either. I see. Frankly, if it came to the pure skill with the sword, no one could match Anoha with Insiriti, and there was actually a pretty good reason for that. Unlike other Shinigami, she had no middle ground. She either had to win with her Zanpakuto in a sealed state or go full nuclear and use her Bankai, which would obliterate everything around her. Anyway, while the duo was chatting, Anohana reached Yuna and swung her sword yet again, just for it to be blocked by Yuna's own. However, a smirk appeared on Yuna's face as she let go of her sword, causing Anohana's eyes to widen in surprise as a fist hit her stomach, sending her staggering backward. Hihi, got the first hit. Anohana couldn't help but frown due to Yuna's words. So what if she got the first hit? Now her sword is on the ground, and she has to somehow pick it up while Anohana is close to her. Obviously, Yuna noticed Anohana's expression and chuckled in amusement. She grabbed the air in front of her, and to Anohana's surprise, a hilt formed quickly, followed by a blade, reforming Yuna's weapon and causing Anohana to squint her eyes. Your Shikai turns your Zanpakuto into ice. Hearing Anohana's words, Yuna nodded in acknowledgement. Correct, there is little more natural for me that using a blade made out of ice. That is just how it is supposed to be. So then, can we finally kick it up a notch? This should be enough of a warm-up, right? Hearing Yuna's words, Rangika, who could only watch the whole fight in awe, almost had a heart attack. This is a warm-up? How monstrous are these two? I'm just happy that Yuna never was after Kira and my life, otherwise, there would have been no way for us to survive the encounter with her. Anohana's spiritual pressure erupted like a volcano when she heard Yuna's words. So far, she was only probing around to see if Yuna was all bark and no bite and would melt the second Anohana used her Bankai. However, she was done with probing now as she no longer had any doubts about what she was capable of. Someone who was at the very least as skilled as her with a sword wouldn't die so easily, even if it was Anohana's Bankai. Very well, since you asked for it, you will get it. Be prepared. Bankai. Minajiki. As soon as Anohana finished speaking, her sword seemed to melt into a reddish liquid, and as soon as the first drop of it touched the ground, small sizzling sounds could be heard as the liquid corroded the ground. Seeing that, Yuna moved instantly as a small opening to the ice barrier temporarily opened, followed by an ice hand grabbing Rangika and throwing her out of the barrier. Yuna could tell that things would become top dangerous in here for her. However, feeling Anohana's intense spiritual pressure, Yuna couldn't help but smile as she flared her own, easily contesting with Anohana. Well, since you have already shown me your Bankai, it would be discourteous of me not to reveal mine. As soon as she finished speaking, she stabbed her sword into the ground and rested her hand on the tip of the hilt. Bankai. Spiritual pressure erupted out of Yuna like magma out of a volcano as the temperature in the room decreased at a rapid rate while the ground she had stabbed her sword into started freezing over. The moment the ice came into contact with the acid that was constantly dripping from Anohana's sword, loud sizzling sounds could be heard, and a moment later, the acid was frozen over, sealing it away. Moments later, Yuna's new form was revealed. Unlike other Bankai, her weapon didn't change at all and still looked exactly like it did during her Shikai form. After all, this was the weapon Yuna had spent an eternity with. Suddenly having to fight with something else would only reduce her skill level by a huge margin. Instead of her weapon, her clothes changed completely. She was now wearing a tight-fitting set of white armor that seemed to be made out of ice itself and was highly ornamented with interconnected snowflakes of all types and sizes. Additionally, she now wore a small crystal diadem that circled around a pair of blue fox ears on her head. Also, the eye color of her right eye changed from purple to pure white as white and blue markings appeared on her face. And finally, the biggest change, there were now 10 blue fox tails with white tips attached to where her spine ended above her butt. A few seconds later, Yuna's spiritual pressure settled, and she raised her sword, which was still stabbed into the ground, and pointed it at Anohana. 10-tailed heavenly demon fox's shape, goddess of ice's divine regalia. Don't die on me, Anohana. Hearing Yuna's words, Anohana's grin twisted further as she raised her sword and slashed it down, causing a sea of acid to shoot toward Yuna. Ha ha ha, do not die, these are my words. Don't die before I can experience the thrill of battle. Yuna's face split into a grin as she charged forward directly into the incoming acid wave. Just before she could reach it, she slashed down her sword, causing the sea to part while carving a frozen pathway into it. Ha ha ha, very well. Come. Clang. The sound of two swords clashing echoed through the room, which was quickly replaced with a sizzling sound as Anohana's acid tried to melt Yuna's swords. However, as soon as the sizzling sound came, it vanished as Yuna's sword simply froze everything touching it. Again and again, the duo clashed as the barrier they were fighting in was filling up with more and more ice and acid, making the environment deadlier by the second. Despite that, the duo wore massive smiles as their swords were constantly clashing, and around a minute later, the fighting slowed down a little as Yuna and Anohana stood in front of each other, their blades pressing into the other while trying to overwhelm their opponent with strength alone. Ha, this is so much fun! This is the second most fun I have ever had. Ah, but I ruined the first occasion due to my weakness, so this might actually be number one. Hearing Anohana's words, Yuen could only shake her head in pity. This little fight is so high up the list? You must have to lead a dull life then. Hi, it couldn't be helped. Everyone I met, all of them, they were weak and couldn't give me what I carved. That's rather sad. How about you join my harem? I have plenty of people that match your strength and even surpass you following me around. Yuna's words momentarily managed to get Anohana out of her battle-crazed state, resulting in her looking at Yuna in disbelief. The harem matter aside, there is no way there are that many people as strong as you hanging around in the human world. Yuna hummed an acknowledgement before shrugging her shoulders. Well, what can I say? There obviously aren't, but things around me are a little more complex, and unless we form a meaningful connection, I'm not willing to reveal all my secrets to you yet. Anohana nodded in acknowledgement as she realized that there were indeed quite a few unusual things about Yuna. That's right, I didn't really pay attention since I was too engrossed in the battle, but the woman in front of me is an enigma. She should be a normal human around the age of 16 or 17, and yet she easily matches my skill with the sword. Considering how long I have been honing my skills, that's a time difference of multiple thousand years. No matter how much of a genius she is, that kind of bridge can't be crossed with talent alone. Clearly, she has quite a few secrets, which I find rather interesting. However, harem? I have no interest in carnal stuff like that. All I live for is for fighting strong opponents. I have not the slightest interest in sex or anything related to it. Yuna couldn't help but shake her head in disappointment when she heard Anohana's claim. No interest in sex? That means you tried it before, right? Yeah, I didn't see the point. Well, I know the point, but I don't see why people are so obsessed with it. Isn't it just an act to keep the family genes running? A glint passed through Yuna's eyes when she heard Anohana's words. She loved convincing people that sex was more than just an act to produce children. Hihi, since you don't seem to care about it, you surely wouldn't mind doing it a few rounds after I've defeated you? Let's see, how about calling it a challenge where I convince you that there is more to sex than just making children? Hearing Yuna's suggestion, Anohana only shook her head in denial. Doing a few rounds after defeating me? What are you talking about? After you defeat me, I'll obviously lose my life, so what's the point of it? Yuna was a little dumbfounded due to Anohana's words, but she quickly managed to regain her bearing. Huh? Why would you lose your life after I defeat you? I want you to be part of my harem, so why would I kill you? That's just silly. This time, it was Anohana's turn to be dumbfounded. Here she was, giving it her all to kill her opponents, but her opponent apparently didn't show any signs of actually returning the favor. You, don't fight to kill me. Hearing Anohana's question, Yuna couldn't help but chuckle in amusement as the 10 tails on her back started moving. Well, let me answer your question with another question. Do you think these 10 tails are just for decoration? Anohana's eyes widened as Yuna's tails suddenly started moving, piercing towards her with ice-covered tips. She moved as fast as she could as she deflected a few tails with her sword while dodging a few more. Despite that, 3 of them managed to reach her, resulting in 3 bloody gashes appearing on Anohana's body. Well, ready to give up and have a few rounds underneath the sheets. Although Anohana heard Yuna's words, she didn't answer her and inspected the blood flowing down her body instead. She swiped some of it with her finger and looked at it with fascination. Just how long has it been since someone made me bleed? How this is so exhilarating. As soon as she finished speaking, spiritual power gathered around her hand, which she casually swiped above one of her wounds, healing it instantly. You know, there was only one reason for me to learn how to heal people with Kido. As she continued speaking, her hand resumed moving as well as it wandered from a wound to wound, healing them instantly as a deranged smile appeared on Anohana's face. I learned it to keep my opponent and me alive for as long as I can, to savior the fight as much as I can. Getting defeated, joining your harem, and whatever else there is, I don't care. Let's fight to our heart's content. As soon as she finished speaking, Anohana's spiritual pressure grew even further, and she attacked Yuna with a crazy smile on her face. Yuna's tails reacted instantly and stabbed towards her, but this time, she didn't retread, resulting in another set of bloody gashes appearing on her body. However, those gashes started closing the moment they appeared, showing how ridiculously proficient Anohana was at spiritual power control, and moments later, she was within striking distance of Yuna. As she slashed down her sword, Yuna moved her own to block it, but before the blades could collide, Anohana stopped holding her sword with two hands and used her left one to intercept Yuna's strike. This resulted in it moving out of the path of her own sword's trajectory, creating an opening while simultaneously reviving heavy damage to her own hand. Yuna couldn't help but be surprised by such a suicidal move but nevertheless moved accordingly, tilting her upper body backward to dodge Anohana's attack. Despite that, she was a little too late to fully dodge the strike, resulting in Anohana actually managing to cut deep into Yuna's armor and leaving a gash behind. Obviously, Yuna wouldn't panic due to receiving such a simple wound and only swiped her finger over it, inspecting her own blood. Honestly, I'm not a fan of suicidal techniques like that, but considering how fast you heal, I guess I shouldn't be surprised. For you, this can't even be called a suicidal technique anymore. Hearing Yuna's words, Anohana couldn't help but smirk as the wound she had just received was already healing at a visible pace. She wanted to get in a word or two, but before she could do so, she froze in place as incomprehensible powerful spiritual pressure erupted out of Yuna. Unfortunately, two can play this game. Anohana's eyes widened as the wound Yuna had just received knit itself together like it wasn't a big deal while Yuna's spiritual pressure continued rising. I see, you think you still have a chance due to your incredible healing techniques, huh? Very well, I wanted to save this for later, but I guess I might as well reveal it right now. As soon as Yuna finished speaking, she raised her hand and put it in front of her forehead while making it look like a claw. Experience despair. Ha ha ha. Before Anohana could realize what was going on, Yuna moved her hand downward, resulting in a fox-like mask appearing on her face. Additionally, as soon as the mask appeared, Yuna's spiritual pressure rose even further, almost causing Anohana to suffocate. Seeing Yuna standing in front of her with her 10 fox tails, ice armor, and hollow-like fox mask, only a single thought passed through Anohana's mind. Where did this monster come from? Chapter 24, vs Anohana 2. Loud explosions constantly echoed through the underground cave as two people clashed again, and while one of the two people was laughing like a maniac, the other one wore a crazed smile as her blood was splattered everywhere after every clash just for her wounds to close instantly. This is it? This is what I have been carving all my life. A fight? A real fight? This is the best moment of my life. Yet again, the duo clashed, resulting in one of Yuna's tails piercing into Anoha's shoulder and an icicle leaving a gash on her cheek. Nevertheless, Anohana continued the attack as she expertly weaved through Yuna's onslaught of projectiles, tail swipes, and deadly slashes. Ha ha ha, amazing. Your swordsmanship and movement techniques are honed beyond perfection. Fighting someone who uses pure skill is always so exhilarating. Hearing Yuna's crazed words, Anohana subconsciously nodded her head in agreement. The only other person who could make her feel this much joy was Zaraki Kenpeki. However, that man fought like a wild beast, recklessly swinging his sword around. Fighting someone like Yuna gave Anohana a totally different level of satisfaction. Ha, this is so great. Just like Kenpeki, Yuna is holding back. I can feel it, but this time it's different. She's allowing me to indulge in my desire. The duo's weapons clashed again. However, as soon as Anohana stopped sliding backward, her body started swaying left and right, resulting in her falling to her knees. Haha damn, I was having so much fun that I didn't even notice how exhausted I was. As she said that, she glanced over her own body, which was ridden with small wounds that no longer healed, causing her to frown. Yuna, seeing the Anohana was at the end of her robe, walked towards her with leisurely steps while taking off her hollow mask and placing it at the side of her head. Phew, seems like you are out of steam, Anohana. How was it? Did you enjoy yourself? Hearing Yuna's question, the maniac grin on Anohana's face widened further as her madness-ridden eyes landed on Yuna. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. I don't think anyone, but you could make me feel like this. A pity, I would have loved to indulge in fighting even more, but I guess this is the end for me. Yuna couldn't help but tilt her head in confusion when Anohana claimed that this was her end. You end? What are you talking about? Pretty sure your wounds are far from lethal. This time it was Anohana's time to look at Yuna in confusion as she resumed talking. What are you talking about? My wounds certainly aren't leather, but aren't you going to finish me off? Huh? Why would I do that? Didn't I ask you to join my harem? These words caused Anohana to pause as she remembered that Yuna had indeed made her an offer like that. Additionally, she remembered that Yuna claimed that there were more powerful people in her harem, meaning that there would be more chances to experience the thrill of battle. I honestly don't care about having sex, but it's not like it's disgusting for me or anything like that, it's just that I don't care for it. However, am I willing to join a harem and engage in sexual acts just to get my hands on more chances to fight like I just did? That's pretty much prostitution. F***ck it, if I get more chances to have a proper fight, I'm willing to do more than just a little prostitution. As long as I can meet more people that can grant me a thrilling fight, I'll join your harem. Hearing Anohana's words, Yuna smiled broadly as the surrounding ice barrier melted away. Excellent, in that case, let's take a long bath to get rid of the sweat and then jump straight under the sheets to have some fun. Instead of commenting, Anohana simply hummed in acknowledgement. She has been sweating quite a bit during her fight with Yuna, so a bath would certainly hit the spot right now. As for the fun under the sheets, she simply didn't mind it. Moments later, the ice barrier was entirely gone, revealing a dumbfounded Rangeka, who was currently looking at the approaching duo with her chin on the ground. What in the world was that? MHH. What exactly do you mean? It was just a little fight between two people with a passion for fighting. No matter how I look at it, this whole fight was insane. I have seen my captain fight before, and that wasn't even close to this monstrous. Hearing Rangeka's outburst, Anohana simply shook her head. Nothing against Captain Hitsugaya, but he is simply too young. I believe in a few thousand years, he will be able to fight at this intensity as well as long as he continues training properly. Okay, then what about Yuna? Isn't she like 17? Anohana nodded her head to Rangeka's question and briefly glanced at Yuna before answering her. While Captain Hitsugaya is undoubtedly a genius, I just fought a monster. Although it is rare, sometimes people are born that are so abnormal that they can no longer be defined with reason. Don't bother too much about this, Lieutenant Matsumoto. Just explain her strength away with her being a monster, and don't spend any more time thinking about it. Although Rangeka still had a lot of doubts, in the end, she decided to obediently nod her head and as no further questions despite still having a few more. After all, why did Yuna have to shikai, and what was going on with that hollow mask? Anyway, let's put all that complicated stuff aside and get to the meat of the matter. Rangeka, you want to join us in the bath and everything that follows. Rangeka almost tripped as she looked at Yuna in disbelief. She already noticed that Yuna was pretty much shameless, but inviting one woman to have sex directly after doing so to another was beyond what Rangeka had expected. Well, she did make it rather clear that she is making a harem, so I guess there is no surprise in her asking that kind of question. So, after thinking about Yuna's question for a few seconds, Rangeka simply shrugged her shoulder. Oh well, why not? Since I'm stuck here for now, I might as well have a little fun. So, around a minute later, three women stood in front of a frozen hot spring with awkward expressions on their faces. Oops. Hearing Yuna's fake chuckle, Rangeka and Anohana could only roll their eyes at Yuna. Luckily, warming up a frozen hot spring was no big deal with the help of Kido, so the trio could enjoy their bath together rather quickly. Several hours later, three naked women were lying next to each other on a comfortable bed. While one of them was already deeply asleep, another one was breathing heavily with her chest continuously going up and down, and the last one simply lay there, enjoying the comfortable feeling of two naked women lying next to you. Well, what do you think, Retsu? Instead of answering the question, Retsu Anohana took a few more deep breaths to regain her composure and only answered after she was done doing so. Honestly, that was significantly more fun than I had expected. Seems like your skills in combat aren't the only thing abnormal about you, Yuna. Hearing Retsu's answer, Yuna chuckled in amusement as she played with the passed-out Rangeka's hair. Yeah, I consider myself to be rather skilled not only on the battlefield but in the bedroom as well. However, I'm curious about which one you enjoyed more. The battle, or the bedroom battle? After Retsu heard Yuna's question, she didn't have to think too long about how to answer and did so after only a few seconds. Although I did the fight inside the bedroom at the end of the day, only a real battle can give me the thrill I need to truly enjoy myself to my heart's content. Yuna simply nodded her head at that. There were all kinds of people with all kinds of preferences, so she didn't mind that Retsu preferred combat over sex. I see, so it's like that. Oh well, let's sleep. Tomorrow will be a long day. Oh, what do you plan to do tomorrow? Yuna couldn't help but smirk when she heard Retsu's question. She was truly looking forward to what was about to happen tomorrow. Hehe, I planned to go there today, but you intercepted me before I could reach them. I plan to go to the 11th division to have some fun. To Yuna's surprise, a hint of guilt appeared on Retsu's face when Yuna mentioned the 11th division, confusing her greatly. What's wrong? Is there a problem with the 11th division? Retsu couldn't help but bite her lip when she heard Yuna's question, as the 11th division was the source of her greatest sin. She considered whether she should tell Yuna about it or not, but considering her strength, Retsu considered that Yuna might actually be capable of removing the consequences of her sin. So, without delaying any further, Retsu told Yuna the story of how she met Zaraki Kenpeke for the first time. How that was the first fight Zaraki and Retsu had ever enjoyed, and about how she finally won the match due to Kenpeke holding back because she was too weak to match him. My greatest sin was being weak in front of the young boy I met that day. Because he didn't want to lose the feeling of savoring the fight, that young man lowered his strength subconsciously to match mine, allowing me to defeat him with my experience. From that day onward, he continuously did the same, lowering his strength further and further until he was just a hull of the powerhouse he once was. In his current state, if you were to face him seriously, you would kill him in one hit. Finishing her explanation, Retsu patiently waited for Yuna to digest everything she was just told, and a few seconds later, Yuna nodded her head in understanding. I see, so it's like that. That's a bit of a pity. Retsu nodded her head in agreement, and after thinking about the situation, some more determination appeared on her face. That being said, I think it is possible to get him out of that mindset. I think that by bringing him to a near-death state continuously, he should sooner or later stop holding back. Every near-death should allow him to unlock more of his real strength. Yuna pondered Retsu's words for a brief moment before nodding in agreement. Although nothing was set in stone, she could certainly see that working out. I see, it might be interesting to help him get his full power back. Yet again, Retsu nodded her head as a hopeful expression appeared on her face. If possible, I would like to request from you that you help him regain his strength. Initially, I planned to do so myself one day, but you are even better suited for this than me, as you might even surpass him in his prime. He was the first person who truly allowed me to enjoy fighting, so I hope you can help him regain that feeling as well. Hearing Retsu's request, Yuna didn't think long about it and simply nodded her head in agreement. Sure, if you request it of me like this, I can hardly reject it, can I? At first, Retsu wasn't sure what Yuna meant by like this, but not even a second later, she realized that she was currently completely naked with her breasts showing, causing her to roll her eyes. No need to pretend, we both know that you will get something out of this as well. I bet you can't wait to fight him at his peak, can you? Yuna couldn't help but chuckle in amusement when she heard Retsu's claim before simply shrugging her shoulder. Never claimed I didn't. However, if you hadn't requested it of me, I might not have bothered to go through all that hassle just to see his true strength. I think it will be a lot of work to actually push him to that point. At that assumption, Retsu could only nod her head in agreement. If it was time to unleash the true Kenpeiku one day, she was prepared to kill him 100, 1000, or even 10,000 times before his full strength was finally restored. Although she was pretty sure Yuna could do so faster, it would still be a huge hassle to do so. Just like that, another night passed, and Yuna left the underground cavern yet again with a clear goal in mind. As for Rangiku and Retsu, they stayed behind and enjoyed a leisurely morning. Although there was not only a gap in age but one in rank as, after yesterday's night activities, the two got along decently well, so Yuna had no trouble leaving them behind. Meanwhile, in another part of Siriti, a young woman with long black hair and almost white eyes left her compound. She had been lazying around for the last few days now and was finally ready to resume her duty. Obviously, she didn't report about her lazing around but instead claimed that she needed to seclude herself for a few days as she felt she was about to have a breakthrough with her sword. She probably would feel guilty about skipping work like that if it weren't for almost every other Shinigami frequently doing the same. Anyway, she was currently on her way to her division's 5th seat as that guy was always well informed to inquire whether anything of interest had happened in Siriti while she was in seclusion. However, just when she was about to reach where he was stationed, a shiver crawled down her spine as she got an incredibly awful feeling. MHH, you look rather familiar. Do I know you? Somehow, that voice seemed a little familiar to the young Shinigami, but she couldn't put her finger on who it actually belonged to. However, for some reason, hearing that somewhat playful voice sent shivers of absolute terror through her spine. Who the hell did just speak? I'm getting the creeps just from her tone of voice. As these thoughts passed through the woman's head, she slowly turned her head to look at the source of the voice, and as soon as she saw the owner, she almost fainted. It was someone who looked like someone she was decently familiar with in her past life and someone she would rather not meet ever again, her sensei, Yuna Uzumaki. F***ck me, you have to be joking. Hearing the woman's words, the Yuna look-alike chuckled in amusement as she disappeared and reappeared in front of the black-haired woman, putting her on guard. Well, I don't mind F***ing you, but that's beside the point for now. Are you by any chance called Hisoka, a student of Yuna Uzumaki? Naturally, Hisoka almost started weeping when she heard Yuna's question. Why is she here as well? Haven't I suffered enough in my past life? Should I lie about being Hisoka? Yeah, right, that will surely work on Yuna-sensei. So, without trying any tricks, Hisoka's shoulders sagged as she looked at Yuna in defeat. Sigh, although I'm not sure what I did to deserve this, it's indeed me, Yuna-sensei. Having her guess confirmed, a broad smile appeared on Yuna's face as she patted Hisoka's shoulder. Ha ha ha, so it really was you, Hisoka. Isn't the multiverse small for us to meet like this? Looking at the hand patting her shoulder, Hisoka's face deadpanned. Really, sensei? Really? We have just met, and the first thing you do is sneak a pranking device onto me. Are you surprised? Honestly, I'm not. Yuna nodded in approval at Hisoka's rather peculiar state of mind but didn't comment any further on it. Anyway, fancy meeting you here. Do you have knowledge about this world from an anime as well? Ha ha ha. Although Yuna was initially laughing, thinking she had made a decent joke, she choked rather quickly when she realized Hisoka's awkward expression. Seriously? Well, it's been almost 100 years since I wanted the anime, so my knowledge is pretty scattered. However, yes, I saw the plot of this one as well. How fascinating. Yuna couldn't help but wonder how Hisoka came to two different worlds she had knowledge of. No, in fact, it was even weirder that there were worlds she had seen in anime. Is the world of her first life some kind of central hub connecting other worlds? Now I'm getting rather curious about what that world has to offer. Anyway, any immediate threats I need to be aware of, Hisoka? Hearing Yuna's question, she started awkwardly looking around, and before she could say anything, Yuna said a few more words. Don't worry, we are currently not being watched by anyone. Although Yuna's words caused Hisoka to smile with a mirthful expression, in the end, she simply started speaking. As expected of Yuna-sensei, you already figured out that some people in this city like to peek. I can give you the full story at a better location, but the current situation is more or less like this. Aizen Sosuke will betray Soul Society and will steal something that is currently hidden in Rukia's soul. Visit nfelbin.cm for Wbnovels. As she was pondering Hisoka's words, Yuna repeatedly nodded her head as if she was confirming a few guesses she had made herself already before she resumed talking and dropped a bomb on Hisoka. I've already allied myself with Aizen. Hearing Yuna's claim, Hisoka choked a little before regaining her bearing while smoothly wiping away the trickle of blood flowing out of the corner of her mouth. Moments later, she started swaying to her sides as she was trying to comprehend what she had just heard, and in the end, she simply fell to her knees, a single tear flowing down her face. I'm sorry, Aizen. I always thought you were a pretty cool villain, but there is nothing I can do to preserve your dignity. Good luck, and again, I'm sorry. On the other hand, Yuna completely ignored Hisoka's antics and resumed talking. Anyway, let's go to a secure location so we can have a proper chat. Hearing Yuna's words, Hisoka simply nodded her head. She knew that there was no point resisting. Chapter 25, Underground Meeting. A few minutes later, Hisoka couldn't help but get a little excited as she watched Yuna unsealing a secret passage. Is this Yoriyuki and Urahara's secret hideout? I can't help but look forward to visiting such an iconic location. After all, this is where Ichigo got his Bankai. Well, considering Yuna-sensei is the one guiding me, there is quite a high chance that this is a different hideout. Maybe even one she made herself somehow. Anyway, after the secret passage was opened, the duo stepped through it and started walking down the stairs, and with every step, Hisoka grew more excited. The duo continued walking, and a few moments later, they reached their destination, causing Hisoka's jaw to drop. Instead of the rocky landscape she had expected, she was greeted by a landscape that was covered by a layer of snow as more snow was gently falling down the sky, creating a soft atmosphere. What the hell? How is it snowing inside an underground cave? Well, it's Yuna-sensei, after all, so I guess this is normal. Although Yuna heard Hisoka's murmuring, she decided to ignore it and guided her deeper into the cave, where Hisoka saw something that made her pause. A few dozen meters away from Yuna and Hisoka, a busty woman wearing thick winter clothes with long blonde hair has just finished building a 3-segment snowman by pushing a carrot into the snowman's lowest segment, causing her to giggle like a schoolgirl. Is that Rangiku Matsumoto? Why in the world is she down here? Hearing Hisoka's question, Yuna simply shrugged her shoulders and started her explanation. Well, you know how it is, don't you? I saw her, she saw me, she has big breasts. So anyway, we f***ed. Hisoka couldn't help but facepalm as soon as Yuna finished her explanation. Right, that was a stupid question. What else could it have been but that? But damn, you sure work fast, sensei. This is like your 3rd day here, and you have already picked up a woman. A pity it's Rangiku, she was one of the people I considered as a possible wife candidate. Oh, you did? What about Teiwaya? As far as I remember, you were completely loyal to her in your previous life. Hisoka could only smile wryly as soon as Yuna finished speaking. Naturally, she hasn't forgotten her previous life's wife. However, what is she even supposed to do about that? Well, I won't deny that I miss her, and if she were in this world, I would gladly marry her again, but I'm unwilling to stay single for all my life because of my marriage from my previous life. Personally, I don't think Teiwaya would want me to do so either. Yuna nodded in approval at Hisoka's words as she asked her next question with a smirk on her face. So, you going for a harem this time? Well, let's just say I wouldn't be against making one. Pa, that sounds like something a quiet would say. If you don't even admit to it proudly with your chest held high, how could you possibly succeed? Hisoka could only shake her head with a wry smile when she heard Yuna's words. In her opinion, only a freak like Yuna could go around boldly picking up women left and right. 2 at once already seems like an impossible hurdle, but somehow Yuna-sensei manages to boldly ignore any obstacles such a relationship might bring and happily add more and more women like it was nothing. If I didn't know better, I would think she has some kind of harem system cheat. While Hisoka was contemplating Yuna's harem powers, the duo reached Rangiku, who was currently attaching 2 additional snowballs under the snowman's carrot and was forming those to her liking, creating a weirdly erotic scene. Not sure what I'm supposed to think about you fondling balls while I'm not with you, Rangiku. Hearing someone suddenly speaking to her, Rangiku flinched, causing her to crush the 2 snowballs she was holding, resulting in Hisoka uttering an uncomfortable whimper. Although it was a long time ago, she had been a man once, so what just happened made her a little uncomfortable. On the other hand, Rangiku finally noticed Yuna, and after registering Yuna's words, she chuckled in amusement. Well, I can't slack off even after joining your harem. After all, who knows if it will work out with us, Yuna. Since I'll be mostly interacting with women, I need to find other ways to train my skills. No need to worry about that. There will be plenty of chances to improve your skills not only with balls but even with phallic objects. Hearing Yuna's answer, Rangiku was slightly taken aback as she tilted her head in confusion. There will? I thought you only accept women? What's that about? Hehe, let's just say Kido has quite a lot of possibilities. Well, the spell isn't done yet, but it's in progress. At first, Rangiku was rather confused by Yuna's words, but after a few seconds, her eyes widened in shock as she looked at Yuna in disbelief. Seriously? You are working on creating that kind of Kido? Yup, what do you think? Honestly, Yuna half expected Rangiku to feel a little weirded out, but her reaction wasn't like that at all, as her eyes started shining with curiosity. Awesome? You definitely have to inform me about that kind of spell and teach it to me when it's done. I was always curious how men feel, so this is perfect. Ha ha ha. Seeing Rangiku getting excited, Yuna couldn't help but chuckle in amusement. Initially, Yuna was only drawn to Rangiku because of her big breasts, looking for some casual fun, but Yuna had to admit that her open and carefree personality was rather fun to deal with. As expected of me, no one is better at picking up interesting women than me. Although I'm not denying your claim, considering how frequently you pick up unique women, I won't be giving you any credit for this one, as you only went after her due to her breasts. What was it again? Right? Luck is also a cultivator's skill, or something like that. Huh? Luck? You only went after someone with big breasts because Hinetas aren't fully grown yet. Sigh, you know me so well, Kurema. Unfortunately, I now have to snitch to Hineta that you said she has small breasts. The hell? I didn't say that at all. I hope we can meet again in your next life. Oi, don't ignore me. Farewell, friend. Oi. While Yuna and Kurema were bickering, Rangiku's eyes landed on Hisoka, causing her face to deadpan. Seriously, Yuna? Do you have to pick up a new woman every day? Isn't this a little too much? Hearing Rangiku's words, Hisoka could only smile wryly as she resumed speaking. I'm not here to join Yuna-sensei's harem, Lieutenant Matsumoto. It's a little hard to explain, but I have known her for a while now and coincidentally met her again here in Soul Society. Hearing Hisoka's explanation, Rangiku immediately came to the conclusion that Yuna was someone Hisoka knew from when she was still alive. Obviously, Rangiku didn't know the background of every single Shinigami, so it was impossible for her to know that Hisoka was born here in Soul Society, and neither could she know that she had already spent dozens of years here, far surpassing Yuna's physical age. Oh, so it's like that. It's quite surprising that you met her again like this. Soul Society is huge, after all. Seems like you are quite lucky. Hisoka's eyes became a little empty as she answered Rangiku with an even emotionless voice. Yeah, I'm so lucky. Seeing Hisoka's unusual facial expression, Rangiku couldn't help but tilt her head in confusion. Although she had to admit that Yuna could be a little weird sometime, she didn't see why Hisoka had such a weird reaction to her meeting Yuna again. Is something wrong? I somehow get the impression that you aren't entirely happy with meeting Yuna again. Is there something wrong with Yuna? Hearing Rangiku's words, Hisoka's eyebrows started twitching as she opened her mouth, just to close it again. Her hands started shaking, which she forcefully suppressed by grabbing her clothes as hard as she could, balling her hands into fists. However, after doing so for a few seconds, a glint of insanity passed through Hisoka's eyes, and she opened her mouth to start speaking. She is a complete degenerate. She is uncontested when it comes to how perverted a human could possibly be. Her favorite jokes are sexual innuendos. She is a complete degenerate. Every time she fights someone strong, she goes on a rampage despite being able to win much more easily if she just fought normally. She is a complete degenerate. She freely switches through different personalities and moods just to trick as many people as possible. She is a complete degenerate. When she wants something from someone, her first thoughts always involve bribery or blackmail. She is a complete degenerate. She has not the slightest care for the sanity of the people around her and mercilessly crushes their minds, plunging them into madness. She is a complete degenerate. Finishing her rant, Hisoka was breathing heavily as she glared at Rangiku, who was looking at her in bewilderment, with bloodshot eyes. Moments later, Hisoka realized what had just happened, and her face paled as cold sweat started flowing down her back. She mechanically moved her head to the side to look at Yuna, who simply was stroking a non-existing beard while deep in thought. That's it, I'm done for. What the hell is wrong with me? Why did I say stuff like that in front of Yuna-sensei? Do I have a death wish? Good game, me. This is it. Taewia, if you are in this world somewhere, don't avenge me. Hell, what am I even saying? There is no way she would do something that stupid. While Hisoka had a panic attack and Rangiku was looking at her in bewilderment, Yuna's thoughts kept wandering. Somehow, those words seemed rather familiar. Cough, I have no idea what you are talking about. MHH, are you sure about that? Yup, no idea what you are talking about. Sure, let's pretend I believe you. As Hisoka was sweating up a storm and Yuna was chatting with Kurema, Rangiku couldn't help but be confused. Isn't she exaggerating things? I mean, yeah, Yuna is a little weird, but is it really that bad? Now that I think about it, she invaded Siridii by herself, defeated 2 lieutenants, made one of them her woman, defeated a captain, and then made that captain her woman as well. Okay, I wasn't really putting much attention on this, but she really is a weirdo, isn't she? As she came to that conclusion, she started pondering the situation some more, and after remembering everything she had experienced in the short time period after she met Yuna, she nodded her head with a satisfied smile on her face. Yup, no matter how I look at it, there is a lot of fun to be had as long as I'm with Yuna. I'm looking forward to it. Meanwhile, Yuna finished her conversation with Kurema and simply shrugged her shoulders. Well, what can I say? Bribing people is simply the best way to get what I want. As for that stuff about turning people insane, thanks for the praise, I do what I can to get rid of the illness called sanity. Pretty sure I'm at the front lines of fighting that illness, just as I am at the front lines in fighting this annoying quirk called common sense. I know it won't be easy to eradicate these useless things, but I'm doing my best. As soon as Yuna finished speaking, an awkward silence reigned over the little group of 3. While Rangiku couldn't help but be confused that was the only point Yuna argued about, basically meaning that she fully accepted the remaining ones, Hisoka could only sigh in relief. Right, I briefly forgot what kind of character Yuna-sensei was. Obviously, she was proud of being a pervert and never shied away from her perverted antics or from her ridiculous behavior. Honestly, now that I think about it some more, I would probably be weirder if she reacted negatively to what I had just called her. Most of those things we traits Yuna-sensei was proud of, after all. Seeing that she wasn't in trouble, Hisoka sighed in relief before continuing to speak to Rangiku. Well, those are my thoughts about Yuna-sensei. Considering her reaction, I guess you could make a good guess about the kind of person she really is. So, what do you think? Obviously, Hisoka didn't want to separate Rangiku from Yuna with those words. She didn't have a death wish, however, she couldn't help but be curious to see how Rangiku would react after hearing Hisoka's rant and seeing how indifferent Yuna was to pretty much all the accusations piled up on her. Hearing Hisoka's question, Rangiku briefly turned quiet as she observed Yuna, who clearly wasn't bothered in the slightest by all the insults Hisoka had piled up upon her. And, a few seconds of pondering later, Rangiku gave her answer. Well, seems like I'm in for a fun ride. I'm looking forwards to what is about to happen. As soon as Hisoka heard Rangiku's answer, her chin crashed on the floor while her eyes opened wide in utter bewilderment. Is she serious? What the hell is wrong with her? How can someone enjoy being together with such a chaotic individual? Although Hisoka didn't comment any further, she could easily read what Hisoka was thinking, causing her to chuckle in amusement. You are wondering how I am fine with this, right? Honestly, it's because it sounds fun. r18 is way too stiff for my taste, and from what I have heard and seen so far, I'm sure Yuna will be able to bring some color to this dreary place. Honestly, I'm looking forward to it. Hearing Rangiku's answer, a shiver went through Hisoka's spine as she realized what was going on. She doesn't get it. She doesn't understand the amount of chaos Yuna-sensei can conjure. She hasn't seen anything yet, thus, she cannot fathom the amounts of minds Yuna-sensei will shatter with her mere presence. Hisoka was just about to continue arguing when a calm, motherly voice spoke to the trio. Era, you are already back, Yuna. Did you find anything interesting? A shiver went through Hisoka's spine as she heard a somewhat familiar voice, and moments later, a mature woman with her hair woven together in front of her chest appeared. Just like Rangiku, she wore thick winter clothes as she held a cup of steaming brown liquid in her bare hands, clearly enjoying the heat emitting from it. Her face was adorned with a kind, motherly smile, completely different from the insanity-ridden grin she had previously displayed. Naturally, this woman was Retsu Anohana. I made some cocoa. Would you like to have some as well, Yuna, Rangiku, unknown additional guest? Oh, please add in a good amount of rum for me, Retsu. I'll take one with some cream, please. Thanks, Retsu. Unlike Yuna and Rangiku, who answered Retsu's question instantly, Hisoka was frozen in place as soon as she saw Retsu Anohana. Retsu Anohana was on her list of captains to absolutely avoid. Although she was the lowest ranking on that list, Hisoka still would rather not have anything to do with her. Obviously, Moyuri Kurotsuke was on the top of that list as he had no qualms about haphazardly planting bombs on random Shinigami, while Aizen was the close second due to his crazy schemes, which Hisoka would rather stay out of. The final candidate, placing third place above Retsu Anohana and below Aizen Sosuke, was Kenpeki, who was somewhat similar to Anohana but with less control over himself. However, Retsu couldn't care less about Hisoka's reluctance to interact with her and simply stared at her, waiting for Hisoka to answer whether she wanted some cocoa or not. Frankly, one of r18's greatest killers, looking at her, patiently waiting for her to say whether she wanted to drink some cocoa, gave Hisoka the chills, but in the end, she managed to push through her bewilderment and stated her desire. Hisoka was aware that Anohana was not someone who randomly started killing people. Well, at least her current self wouldn't do that. Hisoka wasn't entirely sure about her past self. Visit Nfelbin. cm for Wbnovels. Anyway, Hisoka was reasonably confident that as long as she acted politely toward Anohana, nothing bad would happen to her. Could I have a cocoa with a little bit of rum, please? Hearing Hisoka's request, Anohana's motherly smile that had slowly started vanishing after Hisoka didn't answer her made a return as she nodded her head in agreement, causing Hisoka to sigh in relief. As soon as Anohana was gone, Hisoka's head snapped towards Yuna as question marks appeared above her head. What in the world is that about? Why is Captain Anohana down here? Hearing Hisoka's question, Yuna simply shrugged her shoulders as she walked after Anohana towards a set of chairs and a small table. Well, you know how it is, don't you? I saw her, she saw me, we are both battle junkies, so we fought and then f***ed. Hisoka could feel her eyebrows twitch due to that explanation. Although she really wanted to argue that that was utterly absurd, she had a pretty good grasp of how Yuna operated by now, so she wasn't even that surprised due to what she had heard. As expected of Yuna-sensei, she has only been here for a few days, and her degeneracy has already seeped this deeply into the city. Honestly, is Aizen fine? Is he already transformed into a woman? Is he afraid of cake by now? What about old man Yamamoto? Please, for the love of God, don't have him become a woman. Wait a moment, what about Kenpeki? Considering Yuna-sensei's personality, there is no way she wouldn't go out of her way to meet him. Gulp, has he already been turned into a woman and joined Yuna-sensei's harem? Ugh, I should have requested more rum in my cocoa. Chapter 26, vs Hisoka. Cold sweat was slowly trickling down Hisoka's back as she was frantically looking for a method to get rid of the current awkward atmosphere in the room. No, strictly speaking, the only one feeling awkward was Hisoka, as Anohana was patiently sipping her drink with a kind smile on her face, while Yuna and Ranjiko were happily chatting with each other while occasionally giggling and bumping shoulders. What am I even supposed to do? If I were to barge into Yuna-sensei and Ranjiko's conversation, I think I would feel like a third wheel, and I honestly have no idea what topics I could speak about with Captain Anohana. Luckily for her, Anohana decided to break the silence as her eyes met Hisoka's. Pardon me for asking, but is there a problem with your eyes? When I first noticed that they are pure white, I assumed you to be blind, but I don't think that is the case, right? Naturally, if you don't want to answer that, it's no big deal. Hisoka sighed in relief that the awkward atmosphere was finally gone and was just about to answer when Yuna started speaking first. Right, I totally forgot to ask about that, but considering the way your eyes look, do you still have that? Considering how Yuna framed her sentence, Ranjiko couldn't help but get slightly interested as well, thinking that Hisoka had some kind of special ability when she was still alive. So, with everyone's eyes on her, Hisoka could only awkwardly scratch her head as she answered Yuna and Anohana's questions. You are correct, Captain Anohana, I'm not blind and can see without a problem. In fact, I actually have especially good eyesight compared to most other Shinigami. I guess my eyes look like this because of the way my Shikai works. And considering Yuna-sensei's question, I might as well show what I mean by that. As Hisoka finished speaking, she drew her Zanpakuto and held it horizontally in front of her eyes. Reveal Byakugan. As soon as she finished speaking, veins appeared around Hisoka's eyes as her gaze grew sharper. Seeing that, Yuna couldn't help but be a little surprised. Oh, you actually kept your Byakugan, huh? I wonder if Hinata will be jealous if I tell her about that? MHH. Hinata is here as well. Yup, so is Naruto. Ugh, shit. Although Hisoka was a little surprised that Hinata was here as well, she didn't show much of a reaction in the end. However, as soon as Hisoka heard about Naruto being here, she couldn't help but get annoyed. Shit, now I have to deal with two harem protagonists at the same time. Will there even be any women left for me after these two get unleashed on Soul Society? While Hisoka was lamenting her fate, Anohana couldn't help but be a little surprised by Hisoka's Shikai release. She had seen a lot in her long life, but as far as she remembered, she had never seen a Shikai that didn't change the form of the sword itself but a body part of the wielder instead. How interesting. If it isn't inconvenient, could you tell me the ability of your eyes? Hearing Anohana's question, Hisoka simply shrugged her shoulders as she resheathed her blade, deactivating her Shikai in the process. It grants me 360 degrees vision, allows me to see through things, and makes it possible for me to zoom in on things kilometers away from me. In conclusion, it allows her to better peek at people. As soon as Hisoka finished her explanation, Yuna decided to go for a nice little backstab, causing a shiver to go down Hisoka's spine. Although Ranjiko gave her an accusing look, that didn't affect Hisoka much. No, the problem was Anohana, who was still smiling kindly. In fact, her smile seemed to have widened a little when Yuna mentioned that Hisoka could easily peek at people, but despite that, the invisible pressure oozing out of her caused Hisoka to tremble in fear. Why Yuna-sensei, please don't say nonsense. I swear I have never peeked on anyone with my eyes. Instead of answering, Yuna only chuckled in amusement as the dangerous atmosphere surrounding Anohana started slowly receding, causing Hisoka to sigh in relief. However, Yuna's next words sent another shiver down her spine as Yuna started grinning widely. Hihi, now that you have shown sensei your Shikai, isn't it time to reveal your Bankai as well, Hisoka? Haha, what are you saying, Yuna-sensei? I'm just a fourth seat, there is no way I can use Bankai. To Hisoka's credit, she showed no outward reaction to Yuna's words. Whether that was due to her becoming very proficient at lying or because she had expected Yuna's words. Unfortunately, as soon as Yuna made her request, Hisoka's heartbeat started getting a little faster, which Yuna noticed. Hisoka. Hearing Yuna calling her name in a sing-song voice caused Hisoka goosebumps as she immediately got up while drawing her blade, barely blocking Yuna's instantaneous sword strike. However, that wasn't even the worst part, as Anohana, seeing how fast Hisoka moved and drew her blade, started to have some interest in Hisoka as her smile slowly became more deranged. I wonder if she is one of the people Yuna talked about. I guess I'll challenge her to a little fight later on. Meanwhile, Ranjiko saw Anohana's slowly deteriorating smile and could only shake her head in pity. Seem like someone is about to have a bad time. As she said that, she was just about to take another sip from her cup before pausing a moment. After a short pause, she shrugged her shoulders, grabbed a small metal bottle standing on the desk she was sitting on, and poured a little of its content into her cup. Oh well, might as well get a little buzz going. As Ranjiko took a sip from her cup, her face immediately flushed crimson, as her eyes widened in surprise. Strong? Just how strong is that alcohol? Previously, Ranjiko had seen Yuna pour some of the small bottle's content into her drink, so Ranjiko assumed it to be normal rum or something similar, but now she realized that whatever Ranjiko just poured into her drink was far from normal alcohol. Oh well, it's delicious, so it's fine. Besides that, wasn't Yuna already at her second cup? Seems like she has quite the high alcohol resistance as well. Meanwhile, shit, FCK, damn, god effing damn it. Hisoka was cursing up a storm as she was frantically dodging ice projectiles that Yuna shot towards her with a wide grin on her face. Ha ha ha, a lady shouldn't curse like that, do you need the Teiwaya treatment. Yuna's words caused Hisoka's mouth to snap shut instantly, before she immediately retorted Yuna's words. Shit, spare me the will you? I really have had enough of that. Hearing Hisoka's words, Yuna couldn't help but chuckle as she sent another barrage of ice projectiles toward Hisoka. As she was doing so, Rangiku and Anohana offhandedly noticed that Yuna was doing so while not even having her sword released, confusing them a little. Anyway, seeing the wall of deadly ice projectiles flying at her, Hisoka couldn't help but curse as she took the same pose she used when unleashing her Shikai. F***ck it. It's not like there is any way around revealing this with Yuna-sensei being here. Bankai. Powerful spiritual pressure erupted out of Hisoka, causing Yuna to smirk, while Anohana's smile became dangerous, and Rangiku's chin landed on the ground. No way, she actually had a Bankai. Wait a moment, I'm the weakest one in the room, aren't I? What the hell? As these thoughts passed through Rangiku's mind, a gigantic hand entirely made out of earth grew out of the ground in front of Hisoka and blocked Yuna's attacks while filling the air surrounding Hisoka with dust and snow powder. Moments later, a pair of white eyes with blue pupils filled with overlapping white flower patterns shone through the dust, and after another burst of spiritual pressure, Hisoka revealed herself, showing of her changed eyes. Tenseigen. Seeing Hisoka's new pair of eyes, Yuna couldn't help but smile as she pointed her sword at Hisoka. Unleash pandemonium on this world, chaos. As soon as she finished speaking, Yuna's sword changed, changing to a black and white color pattern as the blade itself took on a bend and twisted form, making it look like its creator didn't bother putting any thought into the sword's final look. How interesting. To think you would get the Tenseigen Hyanta's Shikai and Bankai have absolutely nothing to do with her eyes, so I'm really curious about what's going on. Hearing Yuna's words, Hisoka simply shrugged her shoulders as a dense cloak of spiritual pressure covered her body while 9 pitch black orbs appeared floating behind her back. Sorry to disappoint you, Yuna-sensei, but I have no clue why I kept this power either. Yuna hummed in acknowledgement as she got ready for battle. Well, if I had to make a guess, it's because she was more focused on her water-based power rather than her eyes, but oh well. For now, let's see what you can do. As Yuna and Hisoka were talking, a frown appeared on Anohana's face as she inspected Yuna's sword. What is that? Her Shikai looked totally different when she used it against me. Hearing Anohana's words, Rangiku nodded her head in agreement as she refilled her cup while adding another shot from the small metal bottle on the desk with slightly swaying arms. Yeah, I was really surprised as well when Yuna suddenly started using ice against you. Retsu, the first time I fought her, she was using this Shikai as well, so her suddenly having a different Shikai while fighting you was really weird. Although Anohana slightly raised her eyebrows at how casually Rangiku was calling her, but considering what they had done together, she decided not to bother about it. Especially since Rangiku was clearly a little drunk. I see, I was wondering why she was carrying 2 swords, but it seems she actually has 2 different Shikai. I wonder if that translates to 2 different Bankai as well. Or maybe, she can even activate 2 Bankai at once. As soon as Anohana finished speaking, she couldn't help but lick her lips in anticipation. If Yuen was that strong, didn't that mean that she could grow much stronger as well? For Anohana, there was nothing more enjoyable than fighting and getting stronger, so the more powerful Yuna was, the more excited she grew. Hearing Anohana's words, Rangiku simply shook her head while taking another sip. I'm not sure about that double Bankai stuff, but Yuna offhandedly mentioned that her sword spirit was too young to perform Bankai. Anohana deflated a little when she heard Rangiku's words, but in the end, she still couldn't help but smile. In that case, it's just a question of time, isn't it? Frankly, if it were a day ago, Anohana would have probably been pretty shocked by someone having 2 different sword spirits, but due to the intense exposure to Yuna in the last 24 hours, weird stuff like that didn't even manage to make Anohana flinch. Anyway, a loud explosion occurred as the black orbs floating around Hisoka smashed the frozen projectiles Yuna was continuously throwing at Hisoka. Additionally, 2 gigantic earth golems had emerged from the ground and were steadily advancing toward Yuna, barely bothered by the small projectiles constantly smashing into them. Initially, Yuna frowned due to the golem's presence, but moments later, a smirk appeared on her face as she vanished from her position. Well, them's like it's my lucky day. As these thoughts passed through her mind, she appeared above the first golem, slashing her sword through it 2 times before appearing next to the second one and doing the same after seemingly randomly slashing the air twice. Seeing that, Hisoka couldn't help but frown as Yuna's 2 attacks only left 2 insignificant gashes in the golem's body that would heal within seconds. She swiftly commanded the golems to continue advancing, but to her surprise, neither of them was moving. Sorry, I just increased their weight by 100-fold. A shiver went through Hisoka's spine as she suddenly heard Yuna's voice next to her. She quickly raised her blade, barely blocking Yuna's surprise attack, but as soon as her blade came into contact with Yuna's, a deep frown appeared on Hisoka's face as her weapon suddenly felt significantly heavier. The hell? Does her weapon have the same ability as Kira's? However, the weight increase isn't simply 2 times the initial weight, this is much more. Is it a set modifier instead of a multiplication of the current weight? Although Hisoka wasn't happy about it, she needed more information, so she decided to clash with Yuna again. However, as soon as the 2 swords touched, a weird expression appeared on Hisoka's face. What the hell? Why does my Zanpakuto suddenly feel uncomfortably hot? What is going on? Despite the uncomfortable feeling, Hisoka didn't let go of her sword as the black floating balls returned to her and attacked Yuna, who simply deflected them by slashing at them with her sword. The first two she reflected didn't show any changes, but Hisoka could swear that the temperature around them had increased, while the next one, deflected by Yuna, suddenly became hard to control. Hisoka quickly realized that this ball up and down was reversed somehow, forcing her to put more concentration into controlling it. However, from there on, things became even more ridiculous as one of the balls straight up refused to listen to Hisoka after Yuna touched it with her blade and instead started drawing phallic objects into the ground, while others had their controls reversed, became heavier or lighter, and one of them even started glowing, seemingly without any additional effects. No chapters will be fully updated at novel/bin.com. What the hell kind of shikai is this? Naturally, Hisoka couldn't help but get slightly depressed by the weirdness happening in front of her. As far as she had seen, shikai tends to be a rather simple power-up, with Aizen being one of the exceptions. However, Yuna's shikai turned all of that around as it seemingly had endless amounts of different abilities. Seeing the utter confusion on Hisoka's face, Yuna couldn't help but chuckle in amusement. Hehe, my little chaos sure has grown up. Getting stronger. Guess her first real fight must have allowed her to grow up quite a bit, huh? Yeah, that's my guess as well. However, I really wonder where that penis drawing enhancement came from. Any explanation? Chaos. Chaos, random, not chaos fault. Sure, we believe you. While Hisoka's eyes became bloodshot due to her trying to keep up with which of her black orbs was affiliated with what status effect and the Yuna, Kurama, and Chaos trio chatting, Anohana couldn't help but look at what was happening in front of her with curiosity. Another incredible unusual shikai. There are so many diverse effects, but I don't see any order or rhythm of how they are applied. It's almost as if they are applied randomly. Before Anohana could finish speaking, Rangiku finished her sentence with a slur in her voice. Hehe, Yuna's shikai fits her sword's name rather well, Chaos. Hearing Rangiku's words, Anohana briefly pondered on what she had witnessed so far before her eyes opened in realization. No way, her sword's abilities are random. Rangiku nodded in acknowledgement when she heard Anohana's question as she took another sip from her cup, sighing in satisfaction. Ha, delicious yup, the effect Yuna's blade has upon collision is random. However, whatever effects are applied to what she has cut are applied to her own sword as well. Meaning after slashing those two golems, the weight of her sword supposedly increased by 10,000 times, but considering the two random slashes she made after attacking the first one, there must have been a random weight loss modification that she applied to, I guess, multiple snowflakes and her sword. In conclusion, she got a really lucky sequence, hehe. A deep frown appeared on Anohana's face as she digested Rangiku's words. If it came to experience in swordsmanship, few could hope to match her, so after analyzing what Rangiku had said, she quickly realized another thing influencing Yuna's combat style. Does she know what kind of ability her sword will have beforehand? Hearing Anohana's question, Rangiku couldn't help but giggle as she took another sip from her cup, allowing the warm liquid to heat her up from the inside. She claims that she knows randomly what abilities her sword will have for the next 1 to 10 seconds. What a monster, right? Ha ha ha. Anohana couldn't help but nod in acknowledgement to Rangiku's words. Frankly, she was considered Soul Society's greatest sword master, and she honestly couldn't help but feel that she wasn't capable of managing such a complicated gimmick. No, that wasn't entirely correct. She had no doubt about being capable of managing an ability like that. The problem was that while doing so, Yuna's swordsmanship still seemed incredibly fluid, like no matter what kind of weird gimmick awaited her, she could deal with it. Others might be discouraged after discovering someone being significantly more skilled in something they had dedicated a large part of their life to, but Anohana was not that kind of person, as her mouth twisted into a deranged smile. Just how many things is she hiding? How strong is she truly? And most importantly, how much stronger can I become by her side? Dense spiritual pressure oozed out of Anohana as her eyes were glued to Yuna, who was currently toying with Hisoka, while Rangiku could only shake her head. Frankly, if she weren't slightly drunk while having spent the last night with Anohana, she would probably be rather intimidated by Anohana's spiritual pressure. However, in her current state, she could only chuckle in amusement while taking another sip. Well, I guess I need to up my game as well, huh? I don't think I can reach the same level as these two monsters, but after Yuna showed me how to resolve the problem with my soul, I should, at the very least, gun for my Bankai. I don't mind someone stronger protecting me, but there is a limit to that as well. I might not be a prideful person, but I refuse to be a damsel. As those thoughts passed through Rangiku's head, she took another sip from her cup, just to realize that it was empty. Oh well, time for another drink. Chapter 27, Talking Inside a Hot Spring. Around half an hour later, Hisoka could be seen lying on the ground, breathing heavily while covered in sweat. Yuna, who was standing close by with her sword casually resting on her shoulders, simply shrugged her shoulders while overlooking Hisoka's current state. Oh well, I'll give you a pass, Hisoka. Ha, thank God I was about to die ha. No need to thank me. Hearing Yuna's shameless words, Hisoka could only roll her eyes, while not commenting any further. Visit n0vl/bin. For the best novel reading experience. Well, now that we have worked up a nice little sweat, how about another dip in the hot spring, girls? Hearing Yuna's words, Retsu simply nodded her head as she drank what remained in her cup. I wouldn't mind soaking some more. The healing capabilities of that hot spring are rather enjoyable, after all. Rangiku eagerly nodded her head as she copied Retsu and emptied her cup, the third one. Hee. Let's soak everybody get naked. Seeing the somewhat drunken Rangiku eagerly undressing herself, Yuna couldn't help but chuckle a little as her gaze fell on Hisoka, waiting for her answer. Yeah, I'm coming as well. Oh, I expected you to be at least a little embarrassed. Yet again, Hisoka could only roll her eyes as she shakily got up from the ground. Sensei, I'm soaked in sweat while lying in the snow. It's either the hot spring or death for me. A smirk appeared on Yuna's face as she wiggled her fingers in front of Hisoka while laughing like a creepy old man. Gehehe, since we'll be naked anyway, surely you wouldn't mind going a few rounds. Seeing the perverted grin on Yuna's face, Hisoka could only shake her head with a wry smile on her face. Although Yuna acted like a perverted old man, Hisoka knew that she had at least never forced herself on someone. Well, someone who didn't want Yuna to force herself on them. Anyway, a few minutes later, 4 naked women could be seen relaxing in a steaming hot spring surrounded by snow. Ha, this hits the spot. Hearing Hisoka sigh in satisfaction, Yuna simply nodded her head as she leaned back and comfortably rested her arm on Rangiku's shoulder. Rangiku, on the other hand, barely noticed Yuna's arm as she was currently poking her finger at her breasts, which were currently floating in the water. Floating. Seeing that, Yuna nodded in approval as she quickly decided to copy Rangiku's actions and started poking Rangiku's breasts as well, causing her to giggle. You're a pervert, Yuna. Yup. Observing the spectacle in front of her, Hisoka's cheeks reddened as she averted her eyes, while Retsu only shook her head as she picked up a bottle of sake that was floating on a small wooden boat and took a sip. Era youth nowadays sure are energetic, aren't they? Hisoka almost caught out some blood when she heard Retsu's words. After all, Yuna was anything but a youth despite her behavior. Youth my ass? As a Jinhiriki and an Uzumaki in her past life, she should have easily reached the age of 300 or even more. As for someone killing her, I don't believe that can be done. Additionally, I still firmly believe that she had another life before her last one, even though I never really could confirm it. By the way, from what I remember, you are only the 4th seed in your division. How come you can use your Bankai? Or rather, why did you hide that you could use Bankai? A chill went through Hisoka's spine as Retsu's gaze became fiercer while asking those questions. Hisoka really didn't want to get on her bad side. Frankly, I hid it away because I didn't want to draw too much attention. I prefer a calm, peaceful life over the glory of becoming a captain. I planned to work my way up all the way toward becoming a lieutenant, but now, Retsu tilted her head in confusion as she saw Hisoka sighing deeply with regret clearly visible in her eyes. Since you were forced to show your Bankai in front of me, you probably assume that I will reveal it to at least the head captain, but as long as you, hiding your strength, doesn't negatively influence Soul Society, I don't mind hiding it. A bitter smile appeared on Hisoka's face as she shrugged her shoulders and continued speaking. That's very kind of you, but that isn't the problem. I hid my strength to lead a quiet life, but now that I know Yuna-sensei is here, that goal is already impossible to achieve. So, since a quiet life is already impossible, I might as well become a captain, so I have more freedom over my own actions. Although Retsu nodded in understanding, there was still another matter she found rather weird, so she continued speaking. You seem to respect Yuna a lot, but it somehow feels like you don't like her at all. Retsu could easily tell that Hisoka held a lot of respect for Yuna, but considering how often she spoke somewhat negatively about Yuna, there was clearly more to their dynamic. Hisoka could only smile wryly when she heard Retsu's words and quickly explained her position. I do respect Yuna-sensei a lot. Or rather, I respect her strength and overall abilities. However, her antics make her incredibly annoying to deal with, and the fact that she loves creating chaos doesn't make it any better. I respect her strength, but not her personality. Retsu simply nodded her head in understanding as she briefly glanced at Yuna, who was currently flirting with Rangiku. I see, so it's like that. I guess I am at least in a somewhat similar position. I admire her strength while not being too interested in her personality. I see where you are coming from, but are you sure you want to say something like that in front of the person herself? Hearing Retsu's words, Hisoka chuckled in amusement. After all, unlike Hisoka, who had known Yuna for a long time now, Retsu only just got to know her. So, Hisoka directed her gaze at Yuna with a smirk on her face and started talking. Hey, sensei, you are perverted degenerate with a horribly twisted personality. Retsu and Rangiku immediately frowned when they heard Hisoka insulting Yuna. Neither of them felt good about Yuna being insulted. However, Yuna wasn't someone who needed others to defend her, so both of them kept quiet. Yuna, on the other hand, tilted her head left and right, seemingly pondering Hisoka's intentions for saying what she had just said. After a few seconds of thinking, her eyes widened as she raised her left hand and hit her palm with the underside of her right fist. Ah, so it's like that. You finally decided to become part of my harem, huh? Very good. How did you come to that conclusion? Hisoka only wanted to make a point that Yuna didn't care about others describing her personality negatively, so she had no idea how that suddenly turned into her joining the harem. Well, I mean, for you to praise me like that, you obviously want something. So, I considered all the things I have that you might want and know about and quickly singled out the most likely one, my body, which was blessed with unparalleled beauty. Hisoka could only facepalm as she heard Yuna's narcissistic words while Retsu and Rangiku looked at Yuna in bewilderment. This was the second time Yuna had a weird reaction after someone clearly cursed at her. Neither of them could understand how Yuna somehow managed to interpret Hisoka's insults as praise. Naturally, Hisoka noticed their reactions and chuckled in amusement. Yuna-sensei is fully aware of what kind of personality she has and has embraced her own insanity a long time ago. Why would she think someone is insulting her by calling her a degenerate when she herself considers herself to be one? Yuna nodded in approval at Hisoka's words as the arm resting on Rangiku's shoulders started moving, slowly moving her hand towards Rangiku's breasts. That's right, I'm a perverted degenerate. So what? I'm someone that will surpass the pinnacle of the strength of what people thought was possible, so how could I possibly not acknowledge who I am? The first step towards true power is acknowledging who you truly are. Hearing Yuna's words, Retsu and Rangiku became slightly dazed, while Hisoka only rolled her eyes at Yuna, while yet again thinking that Yuna definitely had a life before the one in the Naruto world. Meanwhile, Yuna looked at the state of the three people in front of her and nodded her head. 2 out of 3, as expected of old ancestor speech. I swear, if those two somehow power up after this, I will find a way to kill myself. Ga big brother sad. Ugh, that air. Ha ha ha, don't worry about it, Chaos. This is just a little game Karema, and I like to play. Game? Chaos wants to play, too. Ga, I have a bad feeling about this. Hihi, it's a little too early for you, Chaos. But don't worry, you'll surely participate in our little game soon. Looking forward. Ga, shit, I have a really bad feeling about this. I just wonder which side you will be on. Ga side. Yup, the feeling is getting even worse. By the way, there is something I always wanted to ask you, Yuna-sensei. Hearing Hisoka's words, Retsu and Rangiku came out of their daze while Yuna stopped the conversation with those living inside her body rent-free. Yes. I always wondered about this, but do you remember the life you had prior to your last one? I always knew that you were some kind of anomaly in that world, and considering the way you occasionally acted, I always felt you must have had a past life. While Retsu and Rangiku's eyes bulged, hearing that Yuna apparently not only had memories of her past life but maybe even memories of the one before that, Yuna simply shrugged her shoulders. In her previous life, she hid her memories from her close ones for quite a long time due to not being strong enough to defend herself in case someone found out about her past life, but by now, she had already reached a level where she was confident of defending herself, so she didn't mind Hisoka revealing her secret. Not to mention that Yuna usually only told people about her past life after sleeping with them, so both Retsu and Rangiku fit that criteria, and the only reason she hasn't told them about that was because there was honestly little point in doing so. Unlike her previous life, where some of her partners were only 16 during their first time, both Retsu and Rangiku were way over 100 years old, making age a rather irrelevant factor. Yet, I have memories of my past 2 lives and not just the last one. Honestly, if you had just asked me in my last one, I would have told you as the only reason I didn't do so was that I don't see a point in telling people my backstory randomly. I have better things to do. Hearing Yuna's words, Hisoka simply nodded in understanding while sighing in relief. If someone as abnormal as Yuna was somehow born from an empty slate without any memories to support her personality, Hisoka would have to seriously doubt everything she knew about. Since Yuna revealed that she had a past life before her past life, Hisoka could at least conclude that she went through a lot of crazy incidents that formed her personality instead of actually being like that from the start. Retsu and Rangiku, on the other hand, were still staring at Yuna with wide open mouths, causing her to chuckle in amusement. Yup, you got that right. I have not only memories from my past life but even memories from the life before that. You don't honestly think that a 16-year-old little girl could have that kind of skill in combat, did you? Hearing Yuna's question, Retsu and Rangiku both averted their gazes from Yuna as slight blush appeared on their faces. Frankly, they didn't really believe it, but considering what Yuna did, what else were they supposed to think that it was true? Having memories from their past life wasn't exactly something a sane person would assume to be the case, after all. Although the duo was still somewhat stunned, Rangiku was the first to recover, which probably can be partially credited to the alcohol coursing through her veins. That's so interesting. Hey, how old are you really? I mean mentally. It felt a little odd sleeping with someone as young as you, but since you are mentally older, I think I would stop caring about that. Hearing Rangiku's question, Yuna paused for a moment before shrugging her shoulders. Honestly, I have no clue. Why not? Come on, tell me. I'm curious. Feeling Rangiku push her breasts into Yuna, she could only smile wryly as she shrugged her shoulders. As I said, I have no clue. Frankly, most people stop counting after reaching the 5th digit. Although I kept counting until the 6th one, considering I'm pretty sure I have reached the 7th or even 8th by now, that doesn't really mean much. Silenced covered the group as everyone was looking at Yuna like she had just grown a second head. Only after around a minute of oppressive silence did Hisoka finally manage to open her mouth. The 8th? We are still talking about years, right, Yuna-sensei? MHH. Well, the term years is rather hard to define, considering we were likely from different worlds, but what I consider 1 year loosely matches 350 day and night circles in the human world. Another shock went through Hisoka's body as she looked at Yuna in bewilderment, while Retsu and Rangiku still couldn't fully fathom what they had just heard. The oldest living Shinigami was the head captain, and although no one knew how old he actually was, people believed that he was around 2,000 to 3,000 years old. Although most people perceived that to be truly ancient, comparing that to the age Yuna just mentioned, he might as well be a toddler. 2,000 years? That wasn't even 1% of what Yuna had just mentioned her age to be. In more relatable terms, that was like the difference between a 1-year-old and someone who was 100 years old. Although all of them were shocked by that revelation, Hisoka was the first one to snap out of her daze yet again. Honestly, that was only natural as she was the one who had been exposed to Yuna for the longest time in this group. Wait a moment? You are an old ancestor type. Finally, everything clicked into place for Hisoka. She had noticed a long time ago that Yuna liked to spout profound-sounding nonsense that somehow managed to inspire the people she said it to occasionally. However, so far, Hisoka had never connected that with Yuna actually being one of those cultivation stories' old ancestors, as it was simply too absurd for her to think that Yuna had lived that long and somehow kept that kind of personality. But now that Yuna had admitted to it by herself, Hisoka had no choice but accepted the truth. However, hearing Hisoka's surprised yell, utter disdain appeared on Yuna's face as she raised her head high, pride and arrogance radiating out of her body as her presence turned into something ancient and timeless. Old ancestor type? Don't be ridiculous, brat. I'm not the old ancestor type, I am the old ancestor. This venerable one is just that kind of revered character. Retsu, Rangiku, and Hisoka had chills going down their spines as Yuna's presence grew into something seemingly more ancient than time itself. Unlike Rangiku and Hisoka, Retsu had seen quite a few ancient monsters, but compared to the presence Yuna was currently emitting, all of them were nothing but a side note. This is bad. I'm getting excited. As those words passed her mind, she licked her lips in excitement while briefly glancing at her Zanpakuto, not lying too far away from her current position. I want to go a few more rounds. This is bad. If I'm already this excited due to a few words, I don't think I will ever be able to forget or discard my fights with Yuna after a few more rounds. Ha damn it, I'm already addicted. Naturally, Yuna saw Retsu's condition and chuckled in amusement. Well, I don't mind going a few more rounds with you, Retsu, but I know that you haven't fully recovered yet. We both know that that is not the fight you wish to have, so let's postpone our next battle some more. Hearing Yuna's words, Retsu managed to calm down and took a few calming breaths. Indeed, she wanted to fight Yuna again, but obviously, she didn't want to do so if she wasn't at her peak. She had already got to know that Yuna was stronger than her, making it impossible for her to truly enjoy the fight, but if Retsu were to fight Yuna, she at least wanted to be in her top condition, so she could at least stimulate Yuna to some degree. Seeing Retsu calming down, a smirk appeared on Yuna's face as she stood up while picking up Rangiku and throwing her over her shoulder. That being said, I know about another fun activity we can do to bridge the time until you are fully healed, Retsu. As she said that, she gave Rangiku's butt a crisp smack, causing her to giggle in amusement while Retsu rolled her eyes. Well, see you later, Hisoka. It's time to show off the techniques this old lady has cultivated over her long life. While Hisoka only rolled her eyes as Yuna called herself an old lady, Retsu couldn't help but chuckle a little while Rangiku moaned in pleasure as Yuna massaged her butt. Well, she might be ancient, but considering her rather childish personality, I guess I don't really mind. As these thoughts passed through Retsu's mind, she gave Hisoka a slight nod as she followed Yuna out of the hot spring and into a small hut. Oh well, I will partake as well, so enjoy your alone time in the hot spring, Hisoka. Seeing Retsu happily getting out of the hot spring and following Yuna to what would undoubtedly end in a small orgy, Hisoka could only shake her head with a wry smile on her face. What am I even supposed to say about this? I guess something along the lines of as expected of Yuna-sense would fit the situation. Seriously, what the hell? Chapter 28, Baiting Kenpeki. How is she doing this? How can she slip away from our surveillance so easily? No matter how often you ask that question, you will always get the same answer from me. I don't know. Damn it, this is so annoying. Hopefully, His Majesty won't blame us for this. I don't think he will. The other teams that lost her got away scot-free as well. True, I guess His Majesty simply doesn't care enough about that woman to be interested in her actions. Deeply hidden in the shadows of Siriti, such a conversation is being held. Those living in Siriti aren't aware of this, but there has been a foreign force watching them from the city's shadows for a long time now, only waiting for the right moment to strike. Obviously, not every single Shinigami could be observed all the time, but at least those of significance had people watching them. So, when an intruder suddenly entered the city, some people became curious and started observing the intruder. However, she was like a ghost, constantly evading surveillance just for her to pop up somewhere else a while later. At first, no one was too bothered by that. After all, those observing her were only doing so due to mild curiosity and weren't putting much effort in. However, their boss heard about the mysterious intruder and ordered people to watch her, but despite that, she still managed to slip away every time. Damn it, not only has she somehow spirited away a lieutenant, she even got her hands on a captain somehow? How does she do it? Again, I have no idea either. Just like that, the conversation continued. On a side note, the disappearance of Hisoka wasn't noticed since her rank isn't high enough for her to be a target of observation. Meanwhile, another day passed, and a huge man with spiky black hair wearing an eye patch was currently running through the street of Siriti at high speed. Ha ha ha, turn right, Ken-chan. Are you sure you felt the intruder this time? Hehe, yes, I'm sure. Surprisingly, a small child was clinging to the man's back, occasionally directing the man in a random direction while laughing loudly. This man was Zaraki Kenpeki, while the child on his back was Yachiro Kusajishi, his lieutenant. When he first heard a report about an intruder defeating not one but two lieutenants, he immediately became excited, hoping he found someone worth fighting. So, as soon as he heard the report, he started randomly running through the city, looking for that supposed intruder. Then, things became even more confusing as Captain Unohana went missing as well. However, unlike with the two lieutenant, the chance that the intruder was responsible for that was rather low. Even if she were a normal captain, no one believed that an intruder could fight and defeat a captain in the middle of the city without alarming others. Moments later, Kenpeki came to a halt as he reached a dead end, causing his eyebrows to twitch in irritation. Although he had taken breaks over the course of the last 3 days, he was still rather irritated that he hadn't found anyone yet. Hehe, oops, seems like I was mistaken. However, now I'm sure that the intruder is over there. What? Really? Very well. Without questioning her for a second, Kenpeki immediately set off in the direction Yachiro was pointing at while childish giggles were constantly escaping her mouth. Meanwhile, a pair of purple eyes were following the duo with a hint of amusement in them. That guy is an idiot, isn't he? Yup, there is no doubt about that. He is even worse at controlling his spiritual power than Ichigo. Guy idiot, gahahaha. Oh well, let's see if Retsu's words are true, and he is worth fighting. Minutes later, Kenpeki yet again stood in front of a wall as he reached another dead end. Damn, wrong again. Ken-chan, this time, I really know where to go. Before Kenpeki could answer her, he felt the weight on his back vanish, making him frown. Ha ha ha, I got your loli. Kenpeki's frown deepened as he turned around and spotted a young woman with red and blue hair and purple eyes holding Yachiro up like a trophy. Wah, Ken-chan, I got kidnapped. Hearing Yachiro's carefree tone, Yuna couldn't only chuckle in amusement. Despite being captured, there was no tension in Yachiro's voice as she happily waved her arms at Kenpeki, like something incredible fun had just happened. Despite her carefree attitude, Kenpeki wasn't happy with the current situation, causing his frown to deepen. You are the intruder, right? What was your name again? Yuna? Leave Yachiro alone and fight me. Sure, but only after you catch me. Ha ha ha. As soon as Yuna finished speaking, she turned around and ran away from Kenpeki while still holding on to Yachiro, causing her to laugh as well. Hehe, come Ken-chan, save me. Seeing Yuna running away, Kenpeki clicked his tongue in annoyance and quickly ran after her while his mood soured. Does she want to lure me into a trap? How boring. Guess I can't expect much from this fight if she has to rely on traps. As Yuna was running, she let go of Yachiro's hips and simply placed her on her shoulder, where she happily sat down while occasionally cheering on Kenpeki, telling him to run faster. Ha ha ha, this feels different from riding Ken-chan. Hearing the little girl's words, Yuna almost tripped while running but managed to catch herself before that could happen. Honestly. Hey, humans usually don't talk about riding other humans. It's only natural for the unspeakable to briefly pass through my mind when hearing stuff like that. Sure, tell that to the police. Besides, that little girl might look young, but she is easily over 100 years old. I can already hear the sirens. Ga Yuna, prison. Don't worry, chaos, they will never catch me. I'll snitch you the first chance I get. Snitches get turned into women and are forced to join my harem. Pretty sure that saying goes differently. Snitches get stitches, ga. That's right, chaos. However, in my case, the stitches won't be done with a knife, hehe. As the trio was talking, Yuna reached her destination, an unsuspicious wall that looked exactly like the ones beside it. However, as soon as Yuna had put some of her spiritual power into it, it opened up, revealing a familiar secret passage. Naturally, this was the entrance to Kisuk's secret training ground. Whoa, so awesome. Yachiro became excited as soon as the passage opened as stars appeared in her eyes. Ken-chan, it's a secret passage. That's so cool. Quickly come here and take a look. Meanwhile, Kenpeki couldn't help but frown when he heard Yachiro talking about a secret passage. He, as a captain, didn't know anything about any secret passages within the city, so he really wondered where it came from. After thinking about it for a short moment, he came to the conclusion that he must have simply not paid attention when it was mentioned, which, considering he never paid much attention during the gathering of the other captains, was very likely. So, without any further delays, Kenpeki charged into the passage right after Yuna while already expecting a plethora of traps ahead of him. However, he easily crossed through the passage without any trouble and reached a vast snow-covered cave a few seconds later. This must be where she has prepared her traps. However, how is it snowing in here? Aren't we underground? Kenpeki quickly dismissed these thoughts as his gaze wandered through the cave, and as soon as he saw a certain individual, his face split into a massive grin. Underneath a small pavilion that seemed to be entirely made out of ice, a mature woman was comfortably resting on a recliner, blankets covering her, while a steaming cup was placed in her hands. Yachiro Unohana. Retsu Anohana, or as she previously called herself, Yachiro Anohana, was the person Kenpei respected the most. She was the first person he had ever felt fear towards and the only one who had ever truly fought with him to the limit. Seeing her being one of the captains, Kenpei wanted to challenge her numerous times, but due to some rules or whatever, his request was always denied. Kenpei couldn't give a shit about rules and regulations, but Anohana herself was apparently rather vehement about fighting Kenpei, so there was nothing he could do but wait patiently. He didn't really get what was going on, but considering he had just entered a secret passage and Anohana suddenly appeared in front of him, how could he not assume that it was finally time for him to battle her again? However, as he was lost in thought, a snowball hit the side of his face, causing him to frown. He looked at the source of the snowball and saw Yachiro pouting at him. Ken-chan, I'm still kidnapped? Why aren't you trying to save me? Hearing Yachiro's words, Kenpei's eyebrow twitched a little as he looked at the kidnapped Yachiro. She was currently wearing thick clothes while comfortably sitting on Yuna's shoulder, as a woman he didn't know handed her another snowball, while another woman, whom he identified as the missing lieutenant, was approaching that group with a tray filled with steaming cups. Dodging the second snowball thrown at him, Kenpei's frown deepened as his gaze landed on Retsu, who he assumed to be the preparator. What is going on here? I do want to fight you again, but what is with all the extras? Hearing Kenpei's words, Retsu chuckled in amusement as she calmly took another sip from her drink, sighing in satisfaction. Although I wouldn't mind fighting you to the death, today you won't be fighting me, but Yuna instead. Hearing Retsu's words, Kenpei couldn't help but be dissatisfied as he dodged the third snowball thrown by Yachiro. I don't mind fighting the intruder, but the one I truly want to fight is you. Retsu nodded in understanding as she leisurely closed her eyes and answered Kenpei. In that case, how about this? If you can defeat her, I'm willing to fight you after that. Naturally, if you were weakened after fighting Yuna, I'll even give you as much time as you need to get back to your peak strength. A massive grin appeared on Kenpei's face as he eagerly nodded his head. Finally, he could get another chance to fight Retsu. He had waited centuries for this, and all he had to do was defeat a single intruder. Although Kenpei had no doubts that Yuna was strong due to defeating two lieutenant, in the end, he didn't believe that she could match the power of a captain. He might not have a Bankai himself, but he was fully aware of the massive gap between Shikai and Bankai, so even if it was a lieutenant, as long as they had no Bankai, he didn't care about them. Hehe, so I just have to defeat her to finally have my fight with you. Very well, let's do it. As Kenpei became excited, he focused back on Yuna, who still had Yachiro sitting on her shoulder. By now, she had stopped throwing snowballs at Kenpei and was instead happily drinking from a cup that clearly had something warm inside it. No chapters will be fully updated at novl/bin.com. Frankly, Kenpei had not the slightest clue what was going on here, but he couldn't care less. Yachiro clearly was safe, and there was a potential good fight, followed by his dream fight in front of him. Why would he bother thinking too deeply about this? It was the time to fight, not to think. As these thoughts crossed his mind, his spiritual pressure erupted out of him, covering the whole cave instantly. To Kenpei's delight, Yuna didn't even flinch when his spiritual pressure washed over her, and to his surprise, the unknown woman didn't flinch either. Oh, this might be more interesting than I thought. Who is that unknown woman? Maybe I should fight her as well? MHH, a 2vs1. As these thoughts crossed his mind, Yuna picked up Yachiro and placed her on the unknown woman's shoulder, and moments later, Yuna mimicked Kenpei's action, unleashing her spiritual pressure, easily contesting with Kenpei's. Feeling the powerful force pressing down on him, Kenpei could help it as a massive smile appeared on his face as the thought of a 2vs1 battle evaporated instantly. He felt that Yuna was someone worthy of fighting, and a 2vs1 would just dilute the experience. Nice spiritual pressure. As those words left his mouth, his grin took on a pinch of insanity as he opened his Shiakusho further, revealing more of his chest. Very good. This might actually be fun. Come, I'll give you a freebie? Cut me anywhere you want. As soon as those words left Kenpei's mouth, a chill went through Hisoka's spine, causing Yachiro, who was sitting on her shoulder, to tilt her head in confusion. Is something wrong, Weird Eyes girl? Hisoka smiled wryly at that sudden nickname but decided not to bother about it as her eyes were fixated on Yuna. There are a few things that should never be done in this world, and one of these things is looking down on Yuna-sensei. Despite her carefree attitude, there is one thing that no one is allowed to make fun of, her strength. As soon as Hisoka finished speaking, Yuna's spiritual pressure erupted like a volcano, instantly turning everything around her into ice as the mild snowfall in the cave intensified and turned into an actual blizzard. Moments later, Yuna's words echoed through the cave, although they seemed to be spoken quietly, barely louder than a whisper, everyone could clearly hear them. Are you looking down on me? Who do you think this venerable one is? A smelly little brat like you dares to talk to me like that? You are courting death. Yuna's spiritual pressure increased even further, causing the ground around her to crack as space itself seemed to tremble. While Hisoka and Ranjiko did their best not to fall to their knees, while Hisoka was shielding Yachiro to some degree, Retsu's face twisted into an insane grin as she looked at Yuna with nothing but pure lust. Whether that lust was sexual or a desire for battle was rather hard to discern, as Retsu seemed to derive the greatest pleasures from battles rather than sexual activities. On the other hand, Kenpei couldn't help but be dumbfounded as incomprehensible amounts of spiritual pressure crashed into him. The only time he had ever felt this much pressure was when he was facing Retsu all these years ago, or at least, that is how he perceived it. What the hell is this? What's with this pressure? It's amazing to think that there was someone else who would put this kind of pressure on me. I just can't help it. Feeling this kind of heavy spiritual pressure, I can't help but get excited. Ha 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 ha, what nice spiritual pressure. I'm getting excited. However, hearing Kenpake's words, Yuen couldn't care less. He had insulted her strength, and he needed to pay for that. So, without anyone in the room realizing what was going on, Yuna vanished from her position and appeared in front of Kenpake, who was still spreading his Shiakusho widely, expecting an attack. Before Kenpake could understand what was going on, a fist smashed into his stomach, instantly causing him to cough out some blood, while his body was flung away, crashing into the cave's wall with a loud boom. A few seconds later, the dust settled, revealing an unconscious Kenpake who had blood flowing out of his mouth. Pathetic. Yuna said a single word, yet it seemed to cast an oppressive silence onto everyone present, causing them to lower their heads. No way, Ken-chan lost instantly? That can't be right. Hearing Yachiro's words, Yuna chuckled in amusement as she shrugged her shoulders. It's only natural for him to lose instantly. After all, he is subconsciously holding back to a frankly ridiculous degree. Retsu, can I count on you for this? While Retsu went to work to heal Kenpake up to his peak, Hisoka couldn't help but sigh in relief. Clearly, Yuna didn't take Kenpake's words too seriously, otherwise, she would have definitely killed Kenpake instantly. After all, the current Kenpake lost against Ichigo, who couldn't even use his Beikai. Hisoka was fully aware that that kind of power level was insignificant to Yuna. So Ken-chan was holding back? I see, so it's like that. I really hope that Ken-chan will be able to have a good fight, otherwise, it wouldn't be fun at all. Hearing Yachiro's words, Yuna chuckled in amusement as she observed Retsu healing Kenpake back to his peak within a short moment. Well, it will take a while, but I'm sure that he will sooner or later get the fight he carves for so heavily. For now, let's continue killing him. As those words left her mouth, Rangiku, Hisoka, and as a result of Hisoka moving, Yachiro instantly took some distance from Yuna, as the pressure oozing out of her increased even further. Retsu, on the other hand, smiled wildly as her face was twisted in pure insanity. This is bad. I'm getting too excited. If she continues being like that, I might actually jump her. Meanwhile, Kenpake abruptly opened his eyes, and the first thing he saw was his sword clashing with Yuna's, confusing him greatly. What is going on? I felt like I was knocked out just now. No, it's impossible for me to get knocked out with a single attack. I see, I must have just been hallucinating. Right, I was just enjoying fighting Yuna. There is no point in getting distracted by random illusions. All I have to do, for now, is enjoy the fight. As those thoughts passed Kenpake's mind, he regained his focus as he withdrew his blade from the clash with Yuna's and slashed at her again. Seeing Kenpake's actions, Yuna simply shook her head, easily dodging Kenpake's strike and slicing her blade upwards, cutting his neck and dealing a fatal injury. Chapter 29, vs Kenpake. What is going on? Currently, Kenpake was rather confused as he swung down his blade, just for Yuna to casually push away the blade with her left hand while slicing her sword upward, leaving a deep wound on Kenpake's body. Moments later, Kenpake felt his consciousness fade away while his eyes slowly closed. Suddenly, his eyes reopened while his blade clashed with Yuna's. Why am I blacking out during the fight? Kenpake slashed at Yuna horizontally, but she simply ducked under the sword strike while stabbing her sword at Kenpake, stabbing him through the heart. Yet again, Kenpake was about to lose consciousness before he abruptly woke up while clashing with Yuna. This has never happened before. This is so weird. While Kenpake was deep in thought, Yuna yet again deflected his blade before giving another devastating wound to Kenpake just for Retsu to heal him to full health again. Yuna was pretty sure that Kenpake hadn't even noticed that their surroundings had changed due to Retsu using her Bankai, which allowed her to heal Kenpake more easily. As Yuna was killing Kenpake again and again, Retsu couldn't help but look weirdly at Yuna. She didn't fight me like that at all. When we fought, she was much more rampant and less methodical. I wonder what the reason is. Hearing Retsu's question, Hisoka nodded her head as she continued watching Kenpake getting killer repeatedly. It's because she has no interest in the current Zaraki Kenpake. He's simply too weak. While Retsu simply nodded her head, Rangiku couldn't help but look at Hisoka weirdly. When she fought me, she wasn't fighting like that either, and I'm much weaker than Captain Kenpake. Hisoka briefly rolled her eyes when she heard Rangiku's words before her gaze landed on Rangiku's face and moments later moved downward. Moments later, Hisoka could only sigh deeply while shaking her head. Well, there are two big, very big reasons for that. Rangiku tilted her head in confusion and patiently waited for Hisoka to continue speaking. However, Hisoka seemed to be done talking as her gaze returned to the fighting duo. A few seconds later, Rangiku thought about Hisoka's words, and after remembering how she briefly glanced at her breasts, Rangiku understood the situation. Ah, that makes sense. Meanwhile, Yachiro was only spectating the fight with a small smile on her face. I don't think Ken-chan currently has much fun, but I'm sure this will end up as a fun fight soon. I wonder if he will be able to hear my voice soon. Meanwhile, the momentum of the fight had slightly shifted as Yuna was now frequently blocking Kenpake's attacks due to getting significantly faster, causing a smile to slowly form on his face as he started to enjoy the fight. Is this pointless little dance really fun to you, Kenpake? Hearing Yuna's words, Kenpei frowned and glanced at her, and to his surprise, there was nothing but boredom visible on Yuna's face. Boring? How can fighting be boring? Don't you love fighting as well? I do love fighting, but can this even be called a fight? I'm just bullying a weakling here. As Yuna said that, she moved from her position for the first time in this fight and instantly appeared in front of Kenpei, slashing her sword at Kenpei's head. Especially if that weakling is holding back. As she said those words, Kenpei instinctively leaned his head back, resulting in Yuna barely missing him. However, as her sword passed his right eye, it tore apart Kenpei's eye patch. The moment the eye patch was removed, enormous amounts of spiritual pressure erupted out of Kenpei, immediately flooding the whole cave. Suddenly feeling power coursing through his body, Kenpei slashed at Yuna far faster than before without even noticing that his eye patch had been removed. Due to Kenpei suddenly being much faster, Yuna was late to react. However, just before Kenpei's sword could reach her, a wall of ice blocked his sword, confusing Kenpei. So you made me use my ice, huh? Sigh anyway, my guess that eye patch sealed away a part of your power was correct. You actually insisted on fighting me with your power sealed. Kenpei, right now, I'm a little angry. As Yuna finished speaking, the cave rumbled as the snowfall intensified, and Yuna's own spiritual power engulfed the cave. She slashed her sword once, resulting in it instantly turning bigger as it gained a transparent white color, activating her Shikai without saying a word. A moment later, she stabbed her sword into the ground while resting her hands on the top of the hilt. Very well, you are someone that matches your opponent's power to relish the fight. However, who do you think you are facing right now? Know your F***ing place. And since you don't seem to know it, I'll teach you. Ban Kai. Yuna's spiritual pressure erupted as the world around her turned white as Yuna simply stood still within the raging storm. Now, she wore a tight-fitting ice armor as Ten Tails leisurely swayed behind. Seeing her new form, Hisoka couldn't help but tilt her head in confusion. That form. Is Kurama with her? And why is it 10 tails instead of 9? Wait a moment, her Shikai looks completely different from the one she used against me? The hell? Rangiku heard Hisoka murmuring these questions and briefly glanced at her before she started speaking. Kurama? That's the name of her sword. And since you are wondering why her Shikai looked differently, she has 2 sword spirits for some unknown reason. Hisoka's eyes widened in surprise as she realized what was going on. Or at least assumed to know what was going on. I see, so Kurama came with her, huh? That Sundara Fox really hasn't an easy life. Teat Sundara Fox. Yeah, he always acts like he hates everything around him, but he's actually a big softie. Rangiku couldn't help but look at Hisoka weirdly after she finished describing Kurama's personality. How in the world did you get to know Yuna's sword spirit? To that question, Hisoka could only shrug her shoulders as she pointed at Yuna. As I've previously mentioned, I knew Yuna-sensei in my past life, and Kurama was with her as well. Or, more strictly speaking, their relationship started with Kurama getting forcefully sealed inside Sensei because someone else was controlling him to rampage in our village. In my previous life, Kurama was a powerful energy construct with sentience, so I'm not really sure why he suddenly turned into a sword spirit. After Hisoka finished her explanation, Rangiku nodded her head in understanding as her gaze returned to Yuna. That might be the reason why she has 2 sword spirits. This time it was Hisoka's turn to nod in agreement. That has been her assumption as well. Meanwhile, back to Yuna and Kenpei's fight. Kenpei was looking at Yuna's new form in a daze as her powerful spiritual pressure crashed into him. Moments later, his was twisted in ecstasy as he roared like a wild beast and attacked Yuna like a madman. However, Yuna was unmoving, as 10 tendrils of ice shot out of the ground and attacked Kenpei, who slashed down his sword, thinking he could easily slice through a bit of ice. Unfortunately for him, the moment his sword made contact with Yuna's ice, only a loud clang could be heard as Kenpei had to step due to the recoil. Not only did he not cut it, but he also didn't even leave a scratch on it, briefly dumbfounding him just for another ice tendril to smash into his stomach, sending him flying away. What are you doing, Kenpei? Call out your sword's name. Hearing Yuna's words, Kenpei scoffed as he wiped away the blood coming out of the corner of his mouth. My sword has no name. It's just a bland sword with no other forms. Yuna scoffed in disdain as soon as Kenpei stopped speaking and resumed speaking, disdain filling her voice. Nonsense, every Zanpakuto has a name after it shared enough time with its wielder. I wonder why you can't hear its voice? I see, it's because you don't want to cooperate with it. Yet again, Kenpei scoffed in disdain as he looked at his sword in indifference. Cooperate? What nonsense. This is my fight, and I'll fight it alone. I have no need to fight side by side with my Zanpakuto. Zanpakuto are just tools for war. Cooperating with your Zanpakuto is something only a coward that is afraid to fight by themselves would say. It's not some strong like you, and I should say. As soon as Kenpei finished speaking, his spiritual pressure grew even fiercer as he yet again attacked Yuna with his sword. Seeing that and hearing his words, Yuna sighed deeply as she raised her blade. Strong? You? Please don't make me laugh. As soon as she finished speaking, she vanished from her position and appeared in front of Kenpei, and sliced her weapon downward. Although Kenpei was shocked by Yuna suddenly appearing in front of him, he still managed to raise his sword to block the attack. However, weak. Yuna's blade cut through Kenpei's like it was made out of tofu, leaving a massive wound on his chest as Kenpei fell to his knees. So, what now? Your tool for war got broken. Kenpei could feel his consciousness fading away as he looked at his broken sword, wondering what had gone wrong for him to lose so easily. Shit. As that single word left his mouth, his consciousness faded away. However, moments later, he quickly opened his eyes, looking around in confusion. I blacked out again. However, moments later, he looked down at his sword and widened his eyes in shock as it was still broken. That wasn't a dream? What happened to my wound? Hearing Kenpei's words, Yuna scoffed in disdain as she leisurely pointed at Retsu. She's been healing you every time I killed you. From the very start of this fight, you never were fighting alone. What? Kenpei looked at Yuna in bewilderment and quickly realized that every time he passed out, Retsu had likely healed him back to his top condition, causing him to clench his fist in anger. However, before he could say anything else, Yuna continued speaking. You are having a misunderstanding from the start here. Zanpakuto spirits are not some outside entity. They are a part of their wielder. You are not fighting me alone. You were fighting me with a part of you missing. I'm not a part of you? I refuse. Well, you are kinda inside me, but your circumstances are very clearly different. Ugh, I really wished you formulated that differently, but at least you agreed with me. Well, it is what it is. After all, you weren't born inside me. Gah, chaos born inside Yuna. Hihi, that's right, chaos. After all, what could represent me better than chaos? Gahahaha. While Yuna was mentally chatting with those inside her, Kenpei was looking at her in a daze. He had never seen it from that perspective and couldn't help but be somewhat bewildered due to what he had just heard. A part of me? Is that really true? Wouldn't that mean I have been fighting all this time half-heartedly? As those thoughts passed through his mind, he gritted his teeth in anger. He loves fighting to the degree that he would even seal his power to enjoy the fight longer. However, he quickly remembered what had happened so far, making him realize that he had pretty much bored his opponent the whole time. So far, he had assumed that everything was a dream due to him repeatedly passing out just after receiving a deadly wound, but now that he realized what really happened, he couldn't help but get angry. I bored my opponent during a fight, not because I'm too weak, but because I was holding myself back. Unacceptable. Kenpei quickly calmed down as he glanced at his broken sword. Is it true? Are you really a part of me? If it's true, you must love fighting as well, right? In that case, let's savor this together? You must feel disgusted, right? We bored our opponent, because I wasn't using everything I had. Don't you fight this unacceptable. Kenpei's frowning face quickly twisted into a grin as he suddenly heard a faint whispering in his mind. It was very quiet at first, but the more Kenpei heard, the more he accepted that his Zanpakuto was part of him. The reason for that was rather simple. His Zanpakuto spirit was clearly furious, not at Kenpei for ignoring it for so long, but he was angry at him because he was boring his opponent. Ha ha ha, that's right. It's unacceptable. Swallow, no Zarashi. Yet again, Kenpei's spiritual pressure erupted, increasing far beyond what he previously could output, as a maddened smile appeared on Yuna's face. Moments later, Kenpei revealed himself, carrying a colossal butcher knife far bigger than himself that looked more like an axe than a sword, resulting in Yuna's smile becoming even more deranged. Yes, that's more like it, Kenpei. Let's party. As soon as Yuna finished speaking, she yet again vanished from her position and appeared in front of Kenpei, slashing down her sword as Kenpei slashed upwards with his own, resulting in the two swords clashing with an enormous shockwave that ruptured the earth. Meanwhile, Retsu was moving her hands around in a strange manner. Moments later, a Kido barrier appeared between the spectators and the two people fighting, shielding them from the overwhelming spiritual pressure that was constantly clashing in front of them. When I first fought him, he didn't even use his Shikai. I really let him down all those years ago. Hearing Retsu's words, Hisoka shook her head with a wry smile on her face and started talking as well. There's nothing you have to feel bad about, Captain Anohina. Only a monster can fight a monster. No matter how talented normal people like us are, we will never be able to beat true monsters like them. Hearing Hisoka's words, Retsu's shoulder sagged a little, but she nevertheless nodded in agreement. After all, when she first met Kenpei, he was just a mere child, while she was the strongest captain of the r18, and despite that, she still was weaker than him. Something like that was not something that could be explained away by simply calling the other party more talented. Clearly, Kenpei was a monster, and so was Yuna. However, before she could say anything else, Hisoka continued speaking. However, Yuna-sensei surpasses even that. Hearing Hisoka's words, a chill passed through Retsu's spine as her gaze returned to the two people fighting, causing her eyes to widen. Despite Kenpei having activated his Shikai, he was entirely suppressed by Yuna, barely able to defend himself from her relentless sword strikes. Despite Kenpei stopping to hold back, she is still cornering him. I want to fight her again. No, I don't want to just fight her, I want to fight her as an equal. I want her to exhaust herself fighting me. Even if I'm defeated in the end, I want to give her at least a good fight. I will become stronger, no matter the cost. As Retsu was spectating the fight in front of her, the fires of ambition reignited in her heart. Up until now, she had always seen her ending as the stepping stone for Kenpei to finally regain his true strength, but now things were different. There was someone in front of her who even surpassed Kenpei. Someone that told her that other strong foes were out there and someone that claimed she could make her even stronger. Thinking about all of this, Anohina couldn't help but lick her lips in excitement. Seems like things are about to get rather interesting. I'm looking forwards to it. As these thoughts passed her mind, Ranjiko looked around in confusion. While she was spectating the fight, she wanted to ask Yachiro if she would like to have another Coco, but somehow, she was no longer there. After wondering where she had gone for a while, Ranjiko simply shrugged her shoulders and ignored this matter. After all, despite looking like a young child, Yachiro was a lieutenant and had the power to back up that position, so Ranjiko wasn't really worried about her. Meanwhile, Yuna and Kenpeka clashed, again and again, destroying everything around them as their weapons continuously met while producing powerful shockwaves. Ha ha ha, what is this? This is so much fun. I enjoy every fight I have, but this is different. This isn't just fighting, this is a true battle. Hearing Kenpeka's maddened laugh, Yuna increased the pressure on him as she started moving even faster as the ice tendrils attacking Kenpeki increased even further. Ha ha ha, true battle? Not yet, Kenpeki. You have still more to show me? Come, use it. Show me your Bankai. Only by using your full strength can this truly be called a true battle. Again and again, the duo clashed as Kenpeki was constantly getting pushed back, occasionally receiving a small wound. Despite that, his face was still twisted into a maniac grin as he ignored all his injuries. Frankly, calling him a beast rather than a human would be rather fitting as he seemed to not even realize what was going on around him as he was totally lost in battle. However, no matter how battle-crazed he was, there was a point where his body could no longer keep up with his desires, so after around an hour of constant high-intensity fighting, Kenpeka simply keeled over, falling on his back. Moments later, Yuna approached his unmoving body and looked at him with a disappointed expression. Wbnovels up Tez on nov/l/bi.com. That's it. That was, at best, a warm-up. How disappointing. Hearing Yuna's words, Kenpeka gritted his teeth in anger. He was doing so not because of Yuna's seemingly mocking words but because he was weak. He was utterly exhausted, yet his opponent still stood tall, seemingly not even winded from all the fighting they did. However, before he could do anything else, the world around him seemed to slow down, and before Kenpeki realized what was going on, Yachiro stood in front of him. What are you doing, Ken-chan? Naturally, Kenpeki was confused due to Yachiro suddenly appearing in front of him in the middle of the battle. What are you doing here, Yachiro? However, Yachiro completely ignored his words and simply resumed speaking. Why are you napping on the floor, Ken-chan? There is still a lot more fun to be had. Look, despite fighting that hard, Yuna is still bored. You can't just end it like this. You should at least give her a proper fight before you go to sleep. Yachiro, what are you talking about? However, Yachiro, yet again completely ignored his question as she continued talking. Come on, we are just getting started. Silly goose, if you would just use me properly, we wouldn't have bored our opponent like this. As those words left Yachiro's mouth, she touched Kenpeka's hand, causing a lot of power to enter his body, confusing him greatly. What did you just do? Silly Ken-chan, this is the power everyone around you has been using. It's the power everyone has been calling. Before she finished speaking, Yachiro's childlike expression turned ferocious as the aura of an incredibly sharp blade erupted out of her body while her eyes reflected the blade Kenpeka was holding, despite not even looking at it. Bankai. Chapter 30, vs Kenpeka Part 2. Hearing Yachiro's words, Kenpeka went into a momentary daze before his face twisted in madness as he realized what was happening. Aargh. A feral roar left Kenpeka's mouth as a ridiculously powerful wave of spiritual pressure erupted out of his body, toppling over nearby stone pillars and crashing into Retsu's Kido barrier, making it wobble. What incredible power! The spiritual pressure alone is already this oppressive, clashing blades with him must be amazing. Ranjiko and Hisoka nodded at the first part of Retsu's sentence while totally ignoring the second part and her insane facial expression. So this is Captain Zaraki's Bankai. Truly worthy of the title Kenpeki. No offense, Captain Anohina. No offense taken, however, I'm surprised that you know of my past title, Hisoka. Hearing Retsu's words, Hisoka simply shrugged her shoulders as she resumed talking. I'm someone who likes to know what's going on around me, and I'm pretty good at gathering information. After all, if I didn't do so, I might end up under Captain Kurotsuki, and the next thing I know, is being experimented on by him due to my unusual Shikai. Or I could end up in Captain Kenpeka's squad, where I would have to spend my time surrounded by battle-hungry gangsters. As Hisoka finished speaking, Retsu simply nodded her head while a wry smile appeared on her face. The Godi r18 really has some bad apple, doesn't it? Well, considering my past as r18's most infamous criminal, I'm not exactly one to speak, but whatever. As Retsu started thinking about her past with a fond smile, Hisoka started murmuring to herself, catching her attention. MHH, Kenpeki Uzumaki? MHH, not bad. Maybe Yuna Kenpeki Uzumaki? Kenpeki Yuna Uzumaki? No, that sounds weird. Maybe she won't bother with the title. Naturally, Retsu realized what Hisoka was implying, causing her and Ranjiko to look at Hisoka in bewilderment. Do you really think Yuna can win against that? Hearing Ranjiko's question, Hisoka smiled wryly as she nudged her chin towards Yuna, motioning Retsu and Ranjiko to look her way, causing shivers to go down their spines. Despite the powerful pressure Kenpeki was oozing, Yuna stood still, her arms resting on the hilt of her sword while her hair was swaying in the wind. At first glance, she looked calm and collected, but a single look at her face pointed to a different picture. A massive insane grin almost split her face into two halves as her eyes radiated joy, madness, and an unquenchable thirst for battle. Despite feeling Captain Zaraki's oppressive presence, there is not a hint of doubt or worry on her face. Huh? I cannot help but be excited to see these two clash. Yet again, Ranjiko and Hisoka simply nodded their heads, agreeing with Retsu's words as another feral roar echoed through the cave, revealing Kenpake's Bankai form as soon as the dust and snow around him were blown away. Currently, he looked more like a demon than a human as his skin had turned red, while black markings were now visible on his face that was twisted into an inhumanely large smile. Ha ha ha, so you can do it, Kenpake. This is what I'm talking about. While everyone was admiring Kenpake's new form, Yuna started laughing like a madwoman as she raised her blade and shot at Kenpake with incredible speed. Yet again, Kenpake roared like a beast while raising his blade and crashing it into Yuna's. Surprisingly, Yuna was blasted away upon impact and crashed into a nearby wall, raising a dust cloud. Ha ha ha, yes? That's it? That's how it's supposed to be. Moments later, Yuna walked out of the hole she had just created as a trickle of blood slowly dripped down from her forehead. Seeing the blood on her forehead, combined with Yuna's current facial expression, caused Hisoka to shiver in fear as she immediately drew out her blade. Bankai, Tensagen. As soon as Hisoka activated her Bankai, Retsu and Ranjiko looked at her weirdly as her truth-seeking orbs started hovering protectively in front of the trio. What are you doing, Hisoka? Sensei's switch got flipped. Things are about to get dangerous. If you have any additional defense methods, I recommend activating them. You are about to witness what it means for two monsters to truly clash. As soon as Hisoka finished speaking, she removed all the snow on the ground with the power of her eyes while a barrier of spiritual power surrounded the trio. Prepare, it's about to get cold. As soon as Hisoka finished speaking, Yuna moved her hand in front of her face and pulled it down, resulting in a fox-like hollow mask appearing on her face, immediately causing Hisoka to curse. F***ck? Hollowification? Shit, of course, she can do that, it's sensei, after all. Although Retsu really would like to know how Hisoka knew that term, she had better things to do as Yuna was currently pointing her sword at Kenpake while the tip of it started glowing. Moments later, a red beam of light shot at Kenpake with a deep-sounding hum, resulting in him raising his sword and swinging it at the incoming energy beam, which everyone present quickly identified as a hollow Zero, cutting it in half. The two halves of Yuna's attack barely passed by Kenpake and crashed into a wall, causing a massive explosion that caused the whole of Siriti to shake. Ha ha ha, as expected of an attack with such a short name, useless. As she finished speaking, she raised her blade, clashing with Kenpake, who had appeared in front of her instantly. As soon as the swords clashed, a shockwave devastated everything around the duo, just for them to clash again and again, destroying everything around them. As the duo pressed their blades against each other, trying to push the other party away, their eyes met, and suddenly, ha 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 ha, both of them started laughing like crazy as they disengaged just for them to swing at each other again and again. Kenpake might be in a berserk state and barely aware of his surroundings, but one thing would hold true no matter in what state he was in. Zaraki Kenpake loves fighting. Meanwhile, Retsu and Ranjiko watched the spectacle in front of them with a mix of awe and terror on their faces. What a terrifying yet fascinating spectacle. Hearing Retsu's words, Ranjiko simply nodded her head as Hisoka's truth-seeking balls moved, forming a shield that blocked the shockwave of yet another clash between Yuna and Kenpake. Captain Anohana, aren't you forgetting something here? At first, Retsu only tilted her head after hearing Hisoka's question, but moments later, her eyes opened in terror. Yuna has yet to use her ice. Yes, Sensei has yet to use her ice, her specialty. Moments later, the clash between the duo came to a lull, as they were simply standing away from each other, cautiously eyeing the other. Ha ha ha, just how long has it been? Suddenly, Yuna started speaking, thick nostalgia lacing her voice. Pretty sure the last time was Madara, wasn't it? Yeah, that was a fun dance, although the ending was a little dissatisfactory. Ga Madara. Ah, you don't know him, Chaos. I'll tell you about it later. Okay, ga. As Yuna finished the conversation, the air around her started trembling, as the temperature in the whole cave dropped instantly. Noticing this, Hisoka's eyes sharpened as she readied herself for what was about to come. It's starting. Ice style. The space around Yuna trembled as a ferocious blizzard rampaged through the massive cave, while it even started snowing outside of the hidden cave, bewildering the inhabitants of Siriti. Domain creation, goddess of ice's divine realm of gluttonous frost. As soon as Yuna finished speaking, the temperature in the whole cave instantly dropped to something that would kill an average human almost instantly, forcing Retsu to use Kido to conjure flames around the spectating trio. However, to her bewilderment, those flames slowly encroached by Yuna's ice, and only a few moments later, they were completely frozen, bewildering Retsu beyond comprehension. She froze. The Kido? That's impossible. Yes, but that doesn't matter right now. Keep creating flames, optimally ones that stay in the air and don't touch Sensei's ice. Everything her ice touches will be frozen sooner or later. Although Retsu couldn't really believe Hisoka's words, another glance at the frozen flames she had just conjured made her realize that Hisoka clearly knew better what was going on than her. So, moments later, extremely hot blue flames started hovering around the trio, pushing back against the cold, at least to some degree. Meanwhile, Kenpake frowned as he felt ice creep up his feet, nailing him to the ground. However, moments later, his spiritual pressure rose even further, pushing against the ice and preventing it from covering him. Seeing this, Yuna laughed in utter madness as she shot toward Kenpeki while thousands of ice tendrils erupted out of the ground, piercing toward Kenpeki, whose smile only widened as his spiritual pressure seemed to grow endlessly. As soon as the first tendril touched him, it shattered like it was made out of glass, with the other ones quickly following the same pattern. However, as each ice tendril briefly touched him, Kenpeki noticed that minuscule patches of ice were left behind on his skin, causing him to frown while raising his blade, blocking one of Yuna's strikes. Ha ha ha, welcome in the belly of the beast, Kenpeki. Let's dance. As soon as she finished speaking, the whole cave came alive and started attacking Kenpeki. Thousands of ice tendrils, gigantic masses of ice, and delicate needles designed to hit vulnerable points started being flung at Kenpeki, who only roared like a wild beast, resulting in his spiritual pressure increasing even further, expelling the ice that was clinging to his body temporarily. As his spiritual pressure was increasing seemingly endlessly, he heard a small voice whispering into his ears, barely allowing him to regain a sliver of sentience. This is bad, Ken-chan. If I give you too much power, your body won't be able to stand it and will rip itself apart. If you continue like this fight will have a disappointing end. As these words passed through his mind, Kenpeka's stance slightly changed as he lightly moved his feet, and before Yuna realized what he was doing, he was in front of her, forcing her to tilt her head to the side. Despite that, a bloody gash appeared on her cheek, resulting in her crazy smile becoming even more pronounced. Yes? You regained a semblance of your consciousness. More? Show me more techniques. Let me overcome all of them. As Yuna finished speaking, the wound on her cheek instantly knit itself together, not even leaving a scar behind, as Kenpeki and Yuna herself made the same foot movements again, resulting in both of them vanishing from their position. As soon as they reappeared, Kenpeki had a gash on his face, while Yuna didn't. Ha ha ha, I successfully stole that one. More? I want more. Come, show me the good stuff. Yuna is a pervert. Don't bother, Chaos. She is too far gone for her to hear us talking. Not even a second later, the fight continued, and while for unskilled people it looked like two madmen constantly smashing their swords at each other, those more skilled would see a terrifying display of techniques as Yuna would not only steal Kenpeke's techniques but Kenpeke would do the same with Yuna's, resulting in him getting more and more skilled after every clash. Obviously, the skill gap between those two was massive, as Yuna has lived far longer than Kenpeke if you were to combine all of her lives together. However, the current Kenpeke had lived far longer in this currently live, making his body far stronger than Yuna's current one, which was still immature, thus putting the fighting duo at a stalemate. While Yuna was more skilled, Kenpeke was physically stronger and faster. However, there was one aspect that bridged that stalemate. Unlike Kenpeke, Yuna knew about cultivation and had actively practiced it over the course of her short life. Cultivation resources might be scarce in the world of the living, but it was still better than nothing, allowing Yuna to gain a slight advantage over Kenpeke. Despite that, the duo was constantly clashing as Kenpeke sliced through Yuna's ice like it was made out of tofu. The only ice he couldn't cut through was her sword. Yuna had formed the image of her sword for eons and eons, so it was obviously not something that could be cut easily, especially if Yuna held it in her hand and actively supplied it with spiritual power. For hours, the only thing that could be heard in the cave was the clashing of two swords and the maddened laughter of two people who completely lost themselves in the joy of battle, not even realizing that there was another group of three people frantically blocking all the stray bullets being hurled their way. As Retsu's hands moved in a complex manner, conjuring yet another barrier that would probably be broken sooner rather than later, she realized what Hisoka meant when she mentioned that a fight between two monsters was completely different from what she knew. Frankly, it depressed her a little when she realized that in this kind of fight, even just being a spectator was already risky to someone like her. However, Hisoka noticed that Retsu's mood was somewhat down, so she decided to do Yuna a little favor and cheer her up. Hell, this might even reduce the intensity of the headache Yuna will inevitably cause her. After all, Yuna always pays back the favors given to her. You think that you will never reach that kind of level, aren't you, Captain Anohina? I'll put this bluntly, but you are partially correct. Sensei is a monster that no one can compare to. However, in my and Sensei's past lives, the women close to her always reached a ridiculous degree of power. You might never be able to defeat her in a one-on-one battle that can't be helped. However, there were multiple women that were, at best, slightly above average who broke through their limits and reached a level that could almost match Sensei. Apparently, Hinata is here as well. You will see what I'm talking about the moment you see her. Those that associate with Sensei will inevitably close in on her level of power. Staying with Sensei means that you can no longer be ordinary. Although it annoyed Retsu a little that a youngster like Hisoka was cheering her up, in the end, she was still happy about her words. Frankly, her level of strength has been stagnant for centuries. Training no longer improved her strength, while the only two people who could match her, the head captain and Kenpeki, wouldn't fight her or weren't allowed to do so. So, having someone like Yuna around actually excited her quite a bit. Additionally, hearing that Yuna was apparently very skilled at teaching people how to get stronger, Retsu became even more excited. Frankly, this was a dream coming true for her. Finally, she could grow even further, fight even stronger opponents and win even more challenging battles. Additionally to all of this, she was looking forward to fighting Yuna again. She couldn't wait to reach a level where Yuna had to give it her all to fight her. A few more hours passed, and there was finally an end in sight of the battle between Yuna and Kenpeke, as Kenpeke was currently breathing heavily with blood flowing down all over his whole body while Yuna was in a somewhat similar situation. Despite that, neither of them seemed to be willing to back down as fierce determination burned in both of their eyes, almost causing sparks to fly as their gazes met. Hehe, this is it, isn't it? Our final clash. Come, Kenpeke, let's finish this. Although Kenpeke was barely sentient right now, he seemed to automatically grasp what Yuna meant as he raised his colossal blade above his head with both ends, ready to deliver the final blow. Another primal roar escaped Kenpeke's mouth as he poured all the spiritual power he had left into his blade and slashed at Yuna far faster than he had ever done before. Ha ha ha, yes? This how a final clash should be. As she finished speaking, she lowered her sword and swung it upward to meet Kenpeke's downward strike. However, as her sword was moving, a thin layer of ice started covering its blade as Yuna's spiritual pressure was concentrated on it. EO updates tnvel/by.com. Ice sword combination style, heaven and earth splitting frozen slash. The two strikes collided, instantly obliterating everything in the surroundings as the blizzard rampaging in the cave grew even more fierce while the temperature decreased even further. As the clash continued, both Yuna and Kenpeke started laughing yet again, fully engulfed in the joy of battle as they poured everything they had into this last clash. The duo held that position for quite a while. However, after a few moments, Yuna's eyes finally managed to corrode Kenpeke's blade, reaching his hands and causing him to falter for a split second, which Yuna instantly abused to send his blade flying, before delivering a devastating blow to his body, leaving a huge diagonal slash on his torso. Seeing the blood spraying out of his body, Kenpeke didn't despair and looked at Yuna's face instead, and seeing a massive, insanity-ridden grin on her face, Kenpeke smiled as well. Was it as fun for you as it was for me? Yes, it was one of the most fun battles I have ever had. I acknowledge your strength, Zaraki Kenpeke. So far, Yuna had always used the moniker of Kenpeke with at least a hint of ridicule in it, but Kenpeke immediately realized that this time it was different, causing him to smile. Ha, that was the most fun I ever had in my life. To think a true battle would be like this. I'm truly satisfied. As he finished speaking, his consciousness slowly drifted away as his body collapsed on the ground with a satisfied smile on his face. Seeing Kenpeke fainting, Yuna nodded her head in approval as she completely ignored him and walked towards Retsu, Rangiku, and Hisoka, who all sighed in relief when they realized the battle was over. Without even bothering to speak much, Yuna threw Retsu and Rangiku over her shoulders and walked away. Why Yuna, what are you doing? Although Rangiku didn't mind Yuna carrying away like that, she still wanted to know what was going on, while Retsu already had a good idea of what Yuna's intentions were. I had a long, intense battle, so I'm horny as f***ck. In conclusion, it's sexy time. Oh, and Hisoka, take care of Kenpeke for me, would you? Instead of answering, Hisoka only rolled her eyes at Yuna while walking towards Kenpeke anyway, deciding to toss him into the nearby hot spring. If she remembered correctly, that thing should have quite the excellent healing properties. Rangiku, on the other hand, heard Yuna's explanation and looked at her in bewilderment. Does fighting strong enemies really make you horny? Yup. Rangiku could only smile wryly as she got Yuna's one-word answer. However, in the end, she honestly didn't mind. Being constantly bombarded by Yuna and Kenpeke's spiritual pressure caused her quite a bit of stress, so having a bit of fun would be perfect for unwinding her stressed nerves. Retsu, on the other hand, had already half expected for this to happen, as she had realized rather quickly that Yuna was someone who followed her desires. She clearly was already horny after her fight with Retsu herself, so fighting someone like Kenpeke, which was an even more intense fight, obviously would garner an ever heavier reaction from Yuna. And truth be told, Retsu didn't mind in the slightest, as she needed something to reduce her excitement as well. Seeing two incredibly powerful people clash for such a long time while indirectly being promised that she might reach a similar level one day got her incredibly excited. Since Yuna was already exhausted from fighting Kenpeke for a long time, relocating the battle to satisfy her desires to the bedroom was the perfect solution for Retsu. As such, she happily agreed to what Yuna was doing.